After my wife's funeral, my daughter found a hidden lockbox in the back of the closet. She didn't ask what was inside. She didn't ask if it was sentimental. She lunged for it. Her nails dug into my wrist as she tried to rip it from my hands. "Dad, just throw this away," she hissed, her eyes wide with a panic I had never seen before. "Mom is gone. Let it go. Just let it go." But I didn't let go. I took that box to my attorney the next morning. He opened it, read the first document, and the color drained from his face. He looked at me, his hand trembling as he reached for his phone. "Silas," he whispered, "we do not need the police. We need to call the FBI. Before I tell you what was in that box, let me tell you who I am. My name is Silas King. I am 70 years old. If you saw me walking down the street in my worn-out work boots and my faded denim jacket, you would think I was just another old man trying to stretch a pension check. You would see my calloused hands, the hands of a man who spent 50 years laying brick and pouring concrete, and you would assume I have nothing. That is exactly what I want you to think. That is exactly what my son-in-law Brent thinks. I built half the foundations in this neighborhood. I own 3 apartment complexes in Harlem that generate more money in a month than Brent makes in a year on Wall Street. But I never told them. Silence is power. Silence is safety. My wife, Althea, was the only one who knew the truth. And 3 days ago, Althea died. The doctor said it was a heart attack, sudden, painless. But as I stood in the front row of the Grace Baptist Church, staring at the mahogany casket that held the love of my life, nothing felt painless. The air in the church was thick with the smell of lilies and old wood. I was trying to pray. I was trying to say goodbye to the woman who had stood by me when we had nothing but a toolbox and a dream. But I couldn't focus. Because right next to me, standing in a suit that cost more than my first car, was Brent. He wasn't praying. He was checking his watch. Every 30 seconds he would flick his wrist sigh and shift his weight. He smelled of expensive cologne and impatience. He leaned over to my daughter Kendra. I expected him to comfort her. I expected him to offer a tissue. Instead, I heard his whisper, sharp and cold like a majestic snake. "This place is a dump," he hissed. "It smells like mildew and poverty. How long is this going to take? We need to get back to the house and start the inventory." I felt my blood turn hot. My wife was lying 5 feet away, cold in a box, and this man was talking about inventory. He was talking about appraising my furniture before my wife was even in the ground. I looked at Kendra, my beautiful girl, the girl I had carried on my shoulders. I waited for her to slap him. I waited for her to tell him to shut his mouth. But she didn't. She just dabbed her eyes carefully so she wouldn't ruin her makeup and whispered back, "I know, Brent. Just a little longer. We can call the estate liquidator tomorrow morning." Estate liquidator. The words hit me harder than the grief. They weren't mourning Althea. They were calculating her value. They were already dividing up the spoils of a war I didn't know I was fighting. I gripped the back of the pew in front of me until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw them out of the church, but I didn't. I did what I have done my whole life. I stayed silent. I observed. I let them think I was the broken, senile old man they wanted me to be. The ride from the cemetery to my house was silent. I sat in the back of Brent's luxury SUV. He drove fast, aggressive, cutting off traffic. He was in a hurry to get to the house. My house. The house Althea and I bought 40 years ago. The house where we raised Kendra. To me, it was a sanctuary. To them, it was just an asset to be flipped. When we pulled into the driveway, Brent didn't even turn off the engine before he started issuing orders. "Kendra, you start in the kitchen. Check the silver, check the china. Silas, you go sit in your recliner. We don't want you getting in the way. We'll handle the heavy lifting." He didn't call me Dad. He didn't call me Mr. King. Just Silas. Like I was an employee he was about to fire. I walked past him, my boots heavy on the pavement. I didn't go to the recliner. I went straight to the master bedroom. I needed to smell her perfume. I needed to see her things before these vultures picked the bones clean. The room was exactly as she had left it. Her reading glasses were on the nightstand. Her slippers were by the bed. I closed the door and locked it. I leaned against the wood, taking a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I walked over to her closet. Althea was a neat woman. Everything had a place. But as I looked at the floor of the closet, something looked wrong. I had built this closet myself 20 years ago. I laid the oak flooring. I knew every grain of wood. In the back corner behind her winter coats, one of the floorboards was slightly elevated, just a fraction of an inch. A stranger wouldn't have noticed. But I was a contractor. I noticed. I knelt down, my knees popping. I pushed the coats aside. I ran my rough fingers over the wood. There were scratch marks on the edge of the board. Someone had been prying this up. Recently. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. Althea didn't do home repairs. She called me for everything. I pulled a small pocket knife from my pocket and wedged it into the gap. The board popped up easily. It wasn't nailed down anymore. Underneath, nestled in the insulation, was a gray metal lockbox. It was old, battered, with a heavy-duty padlock. I pulled it out. It was heavy. Much heavier than it looked. I sat there on the floor holding the cold metal box. Why did you have this, Althea? What were you hiding? My wife told me everything. We shared bank accounts. We shared secrets, or so I thought. I was about to try and pick the lock when the doorknob jiggled. Then a fist pounded on the door. Dad. It was Kendra. Her voice was sharp, demanding. Why is this door locked? Open up. We need to check the jewelry box. I didn't answer. I stood up, holding the box against my chest. Open the door. Brent says we need to catalog Mom's necklaces before you lose them. Lose them. They thought I was incompetent. They thought I was a thief in my own home. I unlocked the door and opened it. Kendra breezed in her eyes, scanning the room like a radar. She looked at the dresser. She looked at the nightstand. And then her eyes dropped to my hands. She froze. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. Her eyes locked onto the gray metal box. What is that? She asked. Her voice wasn't bossy anymore. It was terrified. I found it under the floor. I said, my voice gravelly and low. Do you know what this is, Kendra? She didn't answer. She lunged. It happened so fast I almost dropped it. She grabbed the box with both hands and yanked. Give that to me. I stumbled back, but my grip held. What are you doing? I shouted. It's nothing. It's just junk. Mom's old junk. She was screaming now, clawing at my fingers. Dad, give it to me. You don't need to see this. It's just old letters. It's trash. If it's trash, why are you shaking? I asked. I shoved her back. I am 70 years old, but I have lifted concrete blocks every day of my life. She stumbled back against the bed. Brent, she screamed. Brent, come here. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Brent appeared in the doorway. He filled the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, his face red with irritation. What is going on? We are trying to work and you two are playing games. He has the box. Kendra gasped, pointing at me. He found the box, Brent. Brent looked at my hands. His eyes narrowed. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a cold, predatory focus. He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. The lock clicked. Silas, he said, his voice dropping an octave, hand over the box. I clutched it tighter. This is my wife's property. That makes it my property. It's complicated, Silas, Brent said, taking a slow step toward me. You wouldn't understand. It's financial stuff. Boring stuff. You don't have the combination. You'll just break it. Give it to me, and I'll handle it for you. He was talking to me like I was a child holding a loaded gun. But I saw his eyes. He was looking at the box like it was a bomb that was about to go off. I'll handle it myself, I said. Get out of my room. Brent laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You're confused, old man. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. Kendra, get his other arm. They were going to take it by force. My own daughter. My own flesh and blood. She moved toward me, tears streaming down her face, but her jaw set in determination. Dad, please, don't make this hard. Just give it to Brent. He knows what's best. I backed up until my legs hit the dresser. I had nowhere to go. Brent lunged, grabbing my shoulder with one hand and reaching for the box with the other. His grip was strong, but he underestimated the strength of a man who built this house with his own hands. I didn't pull away. I stepped into him. I drove my shoulder into his chest and shoved him with every ounce of strength I had left. He wasn't expecting it. He stumbled backward, tripping over his own expensive shoes, and crashed into the wall. A picture frame shattered. "Don't you touch me!" I roared. The sound of my own voice surprised me. It was the voice of the foreman I used to be, the voice that commanded construction sites. Brent looked at me, stunned. He rubbed his chest. Kendra was sobbing by the bed. I held up the box. "Get out, both of you. Get out of this room before I call the police and have you removed from my property." Brent stared at me for a long, tense second. His eyes flicked to the box, then to my face. He saw something there he hadn't seen before. He saw that the old man wasn't broken. Not yet. Fine, Brent spat. Keep your trash. Play with your little box. We have work to do. He grabbed Kendra by the arm, roughly pulling her up. Come on, Kendra. Let him rot in here. They left. But they didn't go far. I locked the door again. I dragged a heavy oak chair and wedged it under the doorknob. I sat on the bed, my chest heaving the box on my lap. The house was quiet for a moment. Then I heard footsteps in the kitchen. I pressed my ear against the bedroom door. The walls in this house were solid, but the vents carried sound if you knew where to listen. I heard Brent's voice. He wasn't shouting anymore. He was whispering, but the tone was frantic. He was on the phone. He found it, Brent said. The old man found the lockbox. No, I couldn't get it. He fought back. Yeah, he's stronger than he looks. Listen to me, if he opens that box, we are dead. Buried. No, he doesn't know about the account yet. I know. I held my breath. We have to accelerate the timeline, Brent whispered. I don't care if it looks suspicious. We need to get him out of here. Tonight. We need to neutralize him before he talks to anyone. Yeah, call the doctor. Tell him the dementia is worse than we thought. Tell him he got violent. I backed away from the door. My legs gave out and I sank onto the bed. They weren't just greedy. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were accelerating the timeline. I looked at the box. Whatever was inside this metal shell was enough to make my son-in-law terrified. It was enough to make my daughter turn on me. I looked at the window. The sun was setting. I was trapped in my own bedroom in my own house with two people who wanted me gone. I looked at the heavy padlock on the box. I didn't have the key. I didn't have the combination. But I had my tools in the garage. I knew I couldn't go to the garage. They would be watching. I had to wait. I had to wait until they slept. I sat in the dark watching the line of light under the door. I waited for hours. I heard them moving around. I heard the clinking of glasses. They were drinking, celebrating or calming their nerves. Finally, around 2 a.m., the house went silent. I waited another hour just to be safe. I grabbed the box. I grabbed a jacket. I didn't put on my shoes because the boots would be too loud on the hardwood floors. In my socks, I moved to the window. We were on the first floor. Althea liked the garden view. I unlocked the window latch. It clicked, loudly. I froze. I waited. Nothing. I slid the window up. I climbed out into the cool night air, clutching the box to my chest. I didn't go to my truck. Brent had the keys. I walked. I walked through the backyard, over the fence I had built for my daughter when she was 5, and into the alley. I walked for 3 miles until I reached the downtown area. I sat in an all-night diner, clutching the box, drinking black coffee, waiting for the sun to come up. As soon as the clock hit 8 a.m., I walked to the office of Rossi and Associates. Tony Rossi was an old friend. He was the only man in this city who knew exactly how much I was worth. When I walked in, his receptionist gasped. I looked like a homeless man, unshaven, still in my funeral suit, carrying a metal box. I need to see Tony, I said. Silas? Tony Rossi came out of his office, his espresso cup halfway to his mouth. My God, you look terrible. Come in. I put the box on his mahogany desk. Open it, I said. Tony didn't ask questions. He saw the look in my eye. He took a heavy letter opener and jammed it into the lock mechanism. He twisted. He was a lawyer, not a thief, but the lock was old. With a loud crack, the latch gave way. Tony lifted the lid. There was no money inside, no jewelry. There was a thick leather-bound ledger and a hard drive, and on top of it all, a single piece of yellow legal pad paper with Althea's handwriting. If you are reading this, I am dead, the note said. And Brent is not who he says he is. Do not trust him. Do not trust Kendra. Check the ledger. Tony opened the ledger. He ran his finger down the first page. His eyes widened. He flipped the page, then another. He stopped. He looked up at me, and his face was pale, completely drained of blood. Silas, he said, his voice barely a whisper. This isn't just tax fraud. This isn't just stealing from your accounts. He turned the ledger toward me. It was a list of transactions, dates, names, and amounts that made my head spin. But it was the names that mattered. These weren't banks, these were shell companies, and some of them were names I recognized from the news, bad names, cartel names. Your wife was tracking them, Tony said. She was documenting everything. Silas Brent isn't an investor. He is washing money, millions of dollars, and Althea found out. Tony reached for his desk phone. He didn't dial 911. We are not calling the police, Silas. The local police can't handle this. If Brent is mixed up with these people, he has protection. We need to call the FBI. I stood there, the room spinning. My wife didn't die of a heart attack. She was murdered. And now I was the only loose end left. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3 a.m. when I heard the sound that ended my life as a father and began my life as a hunter. It was a soft, scratching noise, metal against metal, coming from the bedroom door lock. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The heavy oak chair I had wedged under the doorknob groaned slightly under the pressure from the other side. They were not waiting for morning. Brent and Kendra were trying to pick the lock while I slept. I looked at the heavy metal box sitting on my lap. It felt cold and dangerous, like a loaded weapon. If they broke in and found me with it, there would be no more pretending. I would just be an old man who knew too much, and accidents happen so easily to old men in the middle of the night. I stood up silently, my joints popping in the quiet room. I did not put on my shoes because the heavy work boots would thunder on the floorboards. I grabbed the box and moved to the window. The scratching at the door got louder. I heard Brent whisper a curse word and then the sound of a drill bit engaging. He was going to drill the lock. I had seconds, not minutes. I unlocked the window latch and slid the sash up. The night air hit my face, cool and damp. I looked down. It was a 10-foot drop to the flower beds below. At 40, this would have been nothing. At 70, it looked like a canyon. I threw one leg over the sill. Behind me, the drill whirred to life, a high-pitched scream that tore through the silence of the house. I did not look back. I hugged the metal box to my chest and dropped. I hit the soft earth of the azalea bushes and rolled just like I learned on construction sites years ago to break a fall. Pain shot through my left ankle, sharp and hot, but I bit my lip to keep from crying out. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the throb in my leg, and ran. I did not run to the street where the streetlights might catch me. I ran to the back alley, disappearing into the shadows of the neighborhood I had helped build. I moved like a ghost through the yards of my neighbors, praying that no dogs would bark. I had to get to the one place where Brent could not reach me. I had to get to Tony Rossi. The walk to his office took me an hour. I stuck to the shadows, my socks wet with dew, my ankle throbbing with every step. When I finally reached the brick building on Main Street, the sun was just starting to bleed gray light into the sky. I banged on the heavy wooden door. I knew Tony often slept on the couch in his office during big cases. He was a man who married his work after his wife passed. A light flickered on inside. The door opened and Tony stood there, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt and suspenders. He looked at me, at my dirty socks, my mud-stained trousers, and the metal box clutched in my arms. He did not ask a single question. He just stepped aside and let me in. We went to his private office in the back. The room smelled of old paper and stale coffee. I placed the box on his mahogany desk. The metal clunked heavily. Tony looked at it, then at me. "My daughter tried to take this from me," I said, my voice raspy. "My son-in-law tried to break into my room to get it." "Open it, Tony." Tony went to his tool drawer and pulled out a heavy screwdriver and a hammer. He was a lawyer, but he knew how to use his hands. He wedged the screwdriver into the old padlock. With a grunt of effort, he struck it. One blow, two. The lock shattered. He lifted the lid. I held my breath, expecting to see stacks of cash or maybe gold coins. That is what people usually hide. That is what Brent thought was inside. But the box was empty of treasure. Inside there was only a thick black ledger, a small external hard drive, and a single envelope. Tony picked up the envelope. It had my name on it in Althea handwriting. He handed it to me. My hand shook so bad I could barely tear the paper. I pulled out the note. It was short. "Silas, if you are reading this, I ran out of time. Do not trust Brent. He is not a broker. He is a washing machine for cartel money. Check the ledger. I love you." I handed the note to Tony. He read it and his face went pale. He reached into the box and pulled out the black ledger. He opened it to the first page. It was filled with Althea neat handwriting. Dates, amounts, shell company names. Tony ran his finger down the columns. His eyes grew wide. "Silas, look at this. These are not investments. These are structuring deposits. Look at the dates. Every time Brent claimed he closed a big deal, Althea recorded a massive transfer into an offshore account in the Caymans." He flipped the pages faster. The amounts were staggering. 200,000 here, 500,000 there. And next to each entry, Althea had written notes, names of people, dangerous people. "This hard drive," Tony said, picking up the black square. If this contains the digital proof of what is in this book, your son-in-law is not just a thief. He is laundering money for some of the most dangerous organizations on the East Coast. I sank into the leather chair opposite the desk. My wife, my sweet, gentle Althea. She hadn't been sitting in her sewing room knitting. She had been tracking a criminal enterprise from our guest bedroom. She had been spying on the wolf we invited into our home. Tony stood up and started pacing the room. His legal mind was racing, connecting dots I hadn't even seen yet. He stopped in front of a calendar on the wall and stared at it. Then he turned to me, his expression grave. "Silas, when did Althea start getting sick?" I blinked, surprised by the question. "About 6 months ago," I said. "She started getting dizzy. She was tired all the time. The doctor said it was just age, maybe a weak heart." Tony slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. 6 months ago," he said, pointing at the ledger. "That is exactly when these entries stop being regular and start becoming erratic. That is when she found the main account. Look at this entry." He shoved the book toward me. There was a date 6 months ago circled in red ink. Next to it, Althea had written, "He knows." Tony's voice dropped to a whisper. "She didn't have a weak heart, Silas. She was healthy as a horse. You told me that yourself last year. The dizziness, the fatigue, the sudden heart failure, those are classic symptoms of digitalis poisoning, or arsenic." The room spun. I gripped the armrests of the chair to keep from falling off. Poison. They didn't just wait for her to die. They helped her. "They killed her," I whispered. The realization felt like a physical blow to the stomach. Brent and Kendra. Tony nodded slowly. "If she found out what he was doing and he realized it, he had to silence her. And now you found the box. You are the only loose end left. That is why they tried to break into your room. They aren't looking for money, Silas. They are looking for this evidence. If they find it, they destroy it. And then they destroy you." Tony reached for the landline on his desk. His hand was steady, now resolved. "We are done playing games. I am calling the police commissioner. I know him personally. We are going to get a squad car to pick up Brent and Kendra right now. This is murder, Silas. Capital murder." He lifted the receiver. "Stop," I said. Tony froze the phone halfway to his ear. "What did you say?" "Put the phone down." "Tony," I said. "Silas, listen to me." Tony said, his voice urgent. "These people killed your wife. They will kill you. We need the authorities. If you call the police now, Brent will blame it all on Kendra," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, cold and flat. "Look at the ledger, Tony. Whose name is on the accounts?" Tony looked down. He hesitated. "It says Kendra King," he whispered. "Exactly," I said. "Brent is smart. He put everything in her name. If the police come now, Brent will say he knew nothing. He will say his wife was the criminal. He will let my daughter go to prison for the rest of her life while he walks away with the money he hid elsewhere." "But she is complicit," Silas, Tony argued. "She helped him. She is weak," I said. "She is foolish and greedy, and she betrayed me. But she is my daughter, and I made a promise to Althea the day she was born that I would protect her, even from herself." I stood up, ignoring the pain in my ankle. I took the ledger and the hard drive and put them back in the metal box. "I need to go back," I said. Tony looked at me like I was insane. "Go back? Are you crazy, Silas? You are walking back into a cage with a tiger. They tried to break down your door last night. If you go back there, they will finish the job." "No, they won't," I said, "because they don't know I know. They think I am a confused old man who ran away because he was scared. They think I am senile." I walked to the door, clutching the box. "I am going to use that, Tony. I am going to make them believe I am exactly what they think I am. I am going to go back there, and I am going to get Brent to admit what he did. I am going to get him to put his name on the crime." "Silas, this is suicide," Tony warned, moving to block my path. "It is not suicide," I said, looking him in the eye. "It is justice." Althea didn't run. She stayed and fought. I am not running either. I handed the box back to Tony. "Keep this safe," I said. "Do not call the police until I give you the signal. If I am not dead by tomorrow night, I will bring you the proof that buries Brent alone." I opened the door and stepped out into the morning light. The sun was fully up now, but the world felt darker than it ever had before. I was going back to the house where my wife was murdered. I was going back to look my daughter in the eye and pretend I didn't know she watched her mother die. I was going back to the lion's den, but the lion didn't know that the old sheep walking through the door was bringing the slaughterhouse with him. I walked back into my own house through the front door like a ghost returning to haunt the living. The sun was fully up now, casting long, sharp shadows across the porch I had poured concrete for 30 years ago. My left ankle was swollen to the size of a grapefruit inside my boot, but I did not limp. I could not show weakness. I unlocked the door with my spare key, and the sound of the deadbolt sliding back was like a gunshot in the morning silence. Inside, it looked like a hurricane had spawned in the living room. The sofa cushions were slashed open, spilling white stuffing onto the hardwood floor like guts. The bookshelves were toppled. Althea collection of porcelain angels lay in shattered heaps near the fireplace. They had not just looked for the box, they had torn the house apart in a blind panic. I stood in the entryway watching them. Brent was on his knees by the television console, ripping wires out of the wall. His shirt was soaked with sweat and his hair was standing up in wild tufts. Kendra was in the hallway pulling linens out of the closet, throwing towels and sheets behind her like a dog digging a hole. I cleared my throat. They both spun around. The look on Brent's face was pure feral terror that instantly morphed into rage. He scrambled to his feet, knocking over a lamp. "Where were you?" he screamed. I blinked slowly, letting my mouth hang open just a fraction of an inch. I tried to make my eyes look watery and confused. It is a look I have seen on men in nursing homes, men who have given up. I hated myself for doing it, but it was the only armor I had. "I went for a walk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I wanted to see the river. Althea loved the river in the morning." Brent marched across the room, kicking debris out of his way. He got right in my face. I could smell the stale whiskey on his breath and the sour tang of fear sweat. "You took the box, Silas. We know you took it. We saw the window open. Where is it?" I looked down at my hands. I rubbed them together nervously, pretending to wash away imaginary dirt. Kendra came up behind him. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Dad, please. Just tell us where the box is. We are worried about you. You are not thinking straight." I looked at my daughter. I tried to find the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I read the Sunday paper. She was gone. In her place was this stranger, this desperate woman who was willing to tear her mother legacy apart for a few dollars. "The box," I mumbled. I looked at Brent. "You mean the metal one under the floor?" "Yes, the metal one," Brent hissed, grabbing my shoulders. "Where is it, old man?" "I threw it away," I said. The silence that followed was heavy and thick. Brent let go of my shoulders. He took a step back, his eyes wide. "You what?" "I threw it in the river," I said. I looked at Kendra. "It was just letters, Kendra. Old letters. From before she met me. A man named Marcus. She kept them all these years. I could not stand to look at them. I was jealous. I did not want you to know she loved someone else. It was a lie woven from threads of truth. Althea did date a man named Marcus 40 years ago. Kendra knew that name. That. It gave the lie weight. It made me look like a petty, jealous old husband instead of a man holding the evidence of a federal crime." "You threw it in the river," Brent whispered. His face went from red to a pasty white. "Which part of the river? Where exactly?" "By the bridge," I said. "The current took it. It sank like a stone. It is gone." Brent stared at me. He was looking for the lie. He was looking for the spark of intelligence in my eyes. I let my gaze drift to the broken porcelain angels on the floor. I let my shoulders slump. "I am sorry," I said. "I just wanted her to be mine. Only mine." Kendra let out a sob and covered her mouth. "Oh, Dad." But Brent did not cry. A vein in his forehead began to throb. He looked around the destroyed living room, breathing hard like a bull that had missed the matador. He needed to hit something. He needed to break something. He turned and marched into the kitchen. I followed him, limping now because I could not hold the pain back any longer. Kendra trailed behind me. In the kitchen, Brent was pacing back and forth. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. "Gone," he muttered. "Gone. Do you have any idea what you did? Do you have any idea?" He grabbed a ceramic serving bowl from the counter. It was a blue bowl Althea used for potato salad at every 4th of July barbecue. He hurled it at the wall. It shattered with a sound like a bomb going off. Shards of blue pottery rained down on the linoleum. One piece slid across the floor and stopped at the toe of my boot. Brent slammed his hands onto the kitchen island, leaning over it, his knuckles white. He glared at me. "You are lying," he spat. "You are a lying, senile old fool. You did not throw it away. You hid it. Tell me where it is, or so help me God. I will tear this house down, brick by brick, until I find it. I flinched, pretending to be scared of the noise. I did not hide it. I whined. I told you. It is in the water. Why are you so mad about old love letters, Brent? Why do you care about Althea's secrets? Brent's mouth opened and closed. He couldn't say it. He couldn't say I care because that box proves I am a criminal. He was trapped in his own lie. He took a deep breath, trying to regain control. He stood up straight, smoothing his wrinkled shirt. He looked at Kendra, then back at me. His eyes were cold now, devoid of the fire from a moment ago. This was worse. This was the cold calculation of a man making a business decision. "You are not safe, Silas," he said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I looked at him. "I am fine," I said. "I just went for a walk." "You climbed out a window in the middle of the night," Brent said. "You wandered 3 miles to the river. You destroyed family property. You are delusional, Silas. You are hallucinating about love letters and throwing things into rivers. You are a danger to yourself." He walked over to me. He held out his hand. "Give me your keys," he said. "What?" "Your truck keys. And your house keys. Give them to me." I stepped back. "No, I need my truck. I have to go to the hardware store." "You are not going anywhere," Brent said. "You are not fit to drive. You are barely fit to walk. Give me the keys, Silas, or I will call the police and tell them you are having a psychotic episode. I will tell them you destroyed the living room. Who do you think they will believe? The successful investment banker or the confused old man who climbs out windows?" I looked at Kendra. She was looking at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. She was letting this happen. She was letting him strip me of my freedom. I reached into my pocket. My hand touched the cold metal of the keys. I pulled them out. I dropped them into Brent's open palm. "My phone too," he said. "I need my phone," I said. "What if I fall? What if I need help?" "We are here to help you," Brent said, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We are going to stay here with you, Silas. Kendra and I. We are moving in. Until you get better. Or until we decide what to do with you." He snapped his fingers. "Phone." I handed him my old flip phone. He dropped it into his pocket along with the keys. "Now," he said, clapping his hands together, "since you like wandering off, we need to make sure you stay put." He walked out of the kitchen. I heard him rummaging in his bag in the hallway. He came back with a white box and a power drill. I watched as he climbed onto a chair in the corner of the living room. He drilled 2 holes into the ceiling I had plastered myself. He mounted a small white camera. The red light blinked on, staring at the entire room like an unblinking eye. He moved to the front door. He took a screwdriver and removed the batteries from the smart lock keypad. "From now on," he said, standing on the chair, "this door stays locked from the outside. Only I know the code." He looked down at me from his perch. He looked like a king surveying his subjects. "This is for your own good, Silas," he said. "We can't have you wandering off and losing things. We can't have you hurting yourself." Kendra walked over and took my arm. Her touch was light, but I flinched. "Come on, Dad," she said softly. "Let's get you sat down. You look tired. I will make some tea." She led me to the recliner, the only piece of furniture in the living room that hadn't been overturned. I sat down. The leather groaned under my weight. Brent finished installing the camera. He took out his smartphone and tapped the screen. He looked at the phone, then up at the camera, then at me. "Perfect," he said. "I can see everything from here. Even when I am in the bathroom, I can see every move you make, Silas. So don't try anything stupid." He walked over to the window I had escaped from. He took a handful of long screws from his pocket. He drove them into the window frame, sealing it shut. The wood splintered. He did the same to the back door. He was turning my home into a fortress, a prison. I sat in my chair, my hands resting on my knees. I looked at the camera blinking in the corner. I looked at Brent screwing my freedom shut. I looked at Kendra sweeping up the broken pieces of the blue bowl. They thought they had won. They thought they had trapped a senile old man in a box. They thought they had cut off my escape. But they didn't know about the second phone taped inside the air return vent in the hallway. They didn't know about the copy of the ledger sitting on Tony Rossi's desk. They didn't know that I had spent 40 years building things, and I knew that every structure, no matter how strong, has a load-bearing wall that, if removed, brings the whole thing down. Brent turned around, dusting off his hands. There, he said. Safe and sound. Now, Silas, why don't you take a nap? We have a lot of cleaning up to do. I closed my eyes. I let my head drop back. I let my mouth hang open again. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I listened to them moving around the house. I heard Brent whispering to Kendra that they needed to search the riverbank just in case. I heard them plotting. I smiled internally. It was a cold, hard smile. You think you locked me in here with you, Brent, I thought. But you are wrong. You locked yourself in here with me. You locked yourself in here with the man who knows your secret. You think this is a prison. It is not a prison, son. It is a demolition site, and I am the one holding the detonator. The next morning started with the smell of burnt bacon and a lie wrapped in a smile. I had spent the night in the recliner because I refused to sleep in the bedroom where they could lock me in. My neck was stiff and my ankle throbbed with a dull ache, but my mind was sharp. It had to be. I was a prisoner in the house I built with my own 2 hands, and my jailers were waking up. Kendra came into the living room carrying a tray. She was wearing her silk robe, the one she bought with money she stole from my savings account, though she did not know I knew that yet. She had dark circles under her eyes. Guilt or fear, I did not know which. She set the tray on the coffee table. There were eggs toast and a small glass of orange juice. Next to the juice sat 2 pills. They were small and bright blue. Here you go, Dad, she said. Her voice was too high, too cheerful. It sounded like the voice you use when talking to a toddler or a dog you are about to put down. Eat up. You need your strength. I looked at the food. I looked at the pills. What are those? I asked. My voice was raspy from lack of use. Just vitamins, she said quickly. Brent and I went to the pharmacy this morning. The pharmacist said these are excellent for cognitive health. They will help with the confusion, Dad. They will help you remember where you put the lockbox. She touched my shoulder. Her hand felt cold. I looked at her face. My daughter. The girl I taught to ride a bike, the girl I walked down the aisle, she was looking me in the eye and lying to me. I knew what vitamins looked like. Althea took vitamins every day. These were not vitamins. These looked like sedatives, or worse. I remembered Althea in her final months. She was always tired. She complained of a fog in her brain. She said she felt like she was wading through mud. Kendra had been bringing her tea every afternoon. Special tea, she said. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I picked up the pills. They felt heavy in my palm. Okay, I said. I played the part. I let my hand tremble. I let a little bit of spit gather at the corner of my mouth. I wanted them to see a broken old man. Vitamins. Good. I put the pills in my mouth. I took a big gulp of orange juice. I swallowed loudly. Kendra watched my throat. She watched the muscles move. She let out a breath she had been holding. Good job, Dad, she said. She patted my head. Actually patted my head like I was a child. Now eat your eggs. Brent will be down in a minute. She turned and walked back to the kitchen. As soon as she crossed the threshold, I spit the pills into the napkin on my lap. They were already starting to dissolve, tasting bitter and chemical. I folded the napkin tight. I shoved the eggs into my mouth, chewing fast, forcing myself to eat. I needed the energy. Brent came down the stairs a few minutes later. He was dressed in a suit, but he looked disheveled. He ignored me completely. He walked straight to the back door and whistled. Baron, he shouted, get in here. Baron was Brent's dog, a purebred Doberman that cost $3,000. Brent loved that dog more than he loved his wife. He fed it better meat than he fed me. The dog came bounding in claws, clicking on the hardwood. It was a beautiful animal, sleek and powerful, but nervous. It knew there was tension in the house. Brent poured a bowl of expensive kibble in the corner of the dining room. Eat up, buddy, he said, scratching the dog ears. Daddy has a big day. Daddy. He called himself Daddy to a dog while treating his father-in-law like a prisoner. Brent went into the kitchen to argue with Kendra about coffee. I saw my chance. I whistled softly. Baron looked up. His ears pricked. I held out a piece of sausage from my plate. I had pressed the 2 blue pills into the meat. Come here, boy, I whispered. The dog trotted over. He sniffed the sausage. He didn't smell the bitterness over the grease. He gulped it down in one bite. Good boy, I whispered. I leaned back in my chair and wiped my greasy fingers on my pants. I felt a twinge of guilt. The dog was innocent. But I needed to know. I needed to know what they were trying to feed me, and I needed a distraction. 2 hours later, the distraction arrived. I was sitting in the living room watching the blinking red light of the camera Brent had installed. Brent was on his laptop at the dining table aggressively typing. Kendra was folding laundry. Suddenly we heard a sound from the hallway, a wet retching sound. Brent's head snapped up. "Baron!" He ran into the hallway. Kendra followed. I stayed in my chair listening. "Oh my God," Brent yelled. "What is wrong with him? He is throwing up blood. Kendra, get a towel. No, get the vet on the phone." I heard the dog whining. It was a low-pained sound. Then a heavy thud as the animal collapsed. "He is not moving," Brent screamed. His voice was high with panic. "He is breathing, but he won't wake up." "Baron? Baron, wake up." I closed my eyes. 2 pills. Just 2 pills had knocked out an 80-pound Doberman. If I had taken them, I would be in a coma. Or dead. They rushed the dog to the emergency vet. They didn't even look at me before they left. They just locked the deadbolt and ran. For 2 days, the house was quiet. They came back late at night smelling of the vet clinic and stress. They said the dog was stable but in a deep sleep. The vet couldn't explain it. Toxicity, they said. They thought the dog ate rat poison. They didn't know the poison came from their own pharmacy bottles. On the 3rd day, the doorbell rang. I was still in the chair. I hadn't moved much. I didn't want to give the camera anything to see. Brent opened the door. He was wearing a fresh suit and his lawyer face. "Dr. Evans," he said, booming and fake. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." A man walked in. He was short, balding, and carried a leather medical bag that looked more like a prop than a tool. He smelled of stale cigarettes and heavy mints. He didn't look like a doctor. He looked like a man who bet on horses and lost. "This is my father-in-law, Silas King Brent," said, gesturing to me like I was a piece of broken furniture. "As I told you on the phone, the decline has been rapid. Violent outbursts, wandering, confusion." Dr. Evans walked over to me. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask my name. He shined a pen light in my eyes, blinding me for a second. "Mr. King," he said, his voice bored. "Do you know what year it is?" I stared at him. I let my jaw go slack. I drooled a little. 1974, I whispered. "That was the year I started my construction company. It was a good year." Dr. Evans nodded, making a note on his clipboard. "Disorientation." "Who is the President of the United States?" he asked. I looked at Brent. I pointed a shaking finger. "The devil," I said. Brent sighed, a long, suffering sound. "See what I mean, doctor? He thinks I am a demon. He gets aggressive. He tried to attack my wife yesterday. Dr. Evans didn't even check my pulse. He didn't check my reflexes. He just kept writing. It looks like early onset dementia, possibly Alzheimer with aggressive tendencies," he said. "I have seen this before. It progresses very fast. He is a danger to himself and others." He turned to Brent. "You mentioned needing a competency evaluation for legal purposes." "Yes," Brent said, lowering his voice. "We need to handle his affairs, pay his bills. He can't do it anymore. We need guardianship." Dr. Evans tore a sheet off his pad. "I can certify that. I will write up the full report tonight. But you should look into a facility. Someone in this state needs 24-hour lockdown care." "Thank you," Dr. Brent said, shaking the man's hand. He slipped an envelope into the doctor's palm. It was thick. Cash, thick. "We just want what is best for him." They walked to the door. I watched them go. So that was the plan. They weren't just going to kill me. They were going to erase me first. They were going to use the law to strip me of my name, my rights, and my money. And then once I was locked away in some hole where nobody looked too closely, I would just fade away. A heart attack, a stroke, a sad, inevitable end. Dr. Evans left. Brent went into his office, probably to call the bank. Kendra had left her purse on the kitchen counter. She was in the backyard on the phone crying to a friend about how hard it was to care for a sick parent. I stood up. I moved fast. I went to the kitchen. I opened her purse. It was a mess of receipts, lipstick, and candy wrappers. I dug to the bottom. My fingers brushed against a small orange prescription bottle. I pulled it out. The label didn't have Kendra name on it. It didn't have Brent name. It had the name of a doctor I didn't know. And the medication name was printed in bold black letters. Digoxin. I froze. I knew what digoxin was. I had worked on a hospital renovation once. I talked to the nurses. Digoxin is for heart failure. It regulates the rhythm. But if you give it to someone with a healthy heart, it causes chaos. It causes confusion, nausea, visual disturbances, and eventually cardiac arrest. I remembered Althea complaining about her vision. She said the lights had halos around them. She said she felt sick to her stomach every morning. I looked at the date on the bottle. It was filled 6 months ago, the exact time Althea started getting sick. This wasn't just a sedative. This was the murder weapon. They had poisoned my wife with heart medication. They had watched her get sick day by day and told her it was just old age. They had watched the life drain out of her while they waited for the inheritance, and now they were trying to feed it to me. I heard the back door slide open. Kendra was coming back inside. I dropped the bottle back into her purse and closed it. I scrambled back to the living room and sat down in my chair just as she walked in. My heart was racing not from the medicine, but from a rage so hot it felt like it would burn a hole through my chest. They killed her. The realization wasn't a theory anymore. It was a fact held in an orange plastic bottle. They killed Althea, and they were going to kill me. Kendra walked into the living room. She looked at me. She smiled a sad, pitying smile. "How are you doing, Dad?" she asked. "Did the nice doctor help you?" I looked at her. I looked at the daughter my wife had nursed. I looked at the woman who was carrying poison in her purse. I smiled back. It was a crooked, broken smile. "I am tired, Kendra," I said. "I am just so tired." "Why don't you take a nap?" she said. "I will bring you some tea later." I nodded. Yes. Tea would be nice. I watched her walk away. "You think I am tired, daughter," I thought. "You think I am finished. But I am just getting started. You brought a doctor to declare me incompetent. You brought poison into my house. But you forgot one thing. You forgot to check the structural integrity of the man you are trying to break." I closed my eyes and waited for the night. I had a phone call to make, and I had a signature to fake. If they wanted to play games with legal documents, I would show them how a master craftsman alters a blueprint, you see. The war for my sanity began on a Tuesday with a pair of missing reading glasses and the smell of natural gas. I woke up reaching for the nightstand just like I had done every morning for 40 years. My hand brushed empty wood. I sat up blinking against the morning light. I knew exactly where I had put them. I was a man of routine, a man who measured twice and cut once. I never misplaced my tools, and my glasses were a tool. I checked the floor. I checked the bathroom. I checked the pockets of the pants I had worn the day before. Nothing. I walked into the kitchen squinting to bring the room into focus. Brent was sitting at the island drinking coffee and reading a tablet. He didn't look up. "Have you seen my glasses?" I asked. Brent chuckled without looking away from his screen. "Check the refrigerator, Silas. That is where you put them yesterday. Remember, you tried to pour milk into your shoe and put your glasses in the vegetable drawer." I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. I did not do that. I knew I did not do that, but I walked to the fridge and pulled it open. There, sitting on top of a bag of carrots, were my tortoiseshell reading glasses. The lenses were frosted with condensation. I stared at them. For a second, just a fraction of a second, doubt crept in. Had I done that? Was my mind really slipping? Number 1. I shook my head. This was a trick, a cheap parlor trick. I grabbed the glasses and wiped them on my shirt. "I did not put these here," I said. Brent finally looked up. His face was a mask of pitying condescension. "Of course you don't remember, Silas. That is the nature of the disease. It steals your history 5 minutes at a time. Just be glad Kendra found them before they froze." I wanted to throw the glasses at him, but I remembered the camera blinking in the living room. I remembered that every outburst was ammunition for them, so I just put them on and walked away. 2 hours later, the house smelled like rotten eggs. I was dozing in the recliner pretending to sleep when Kendra screamed. "Dad! Oh my God, Dad! Are you trying to kill us?" I jumped up. The smell hit me hard. Gas. I ran to the kitchen. The back burner on the stove was turned all the way open, hissing poison into the air. There was no flame, just gas. Kendra rushed over and twisted the knob off. She turned to me, coughing dramatically, waving her hands in front of her face. "I just went upstairs for 5 minutes, she yelled. "I left you alone for 5 minutes. Why did you turn the stove on? Were you trying to cook? You know you aren't allowed to use the stove anymore." I stood there, my hands shaking. I had not been in the kitchen. I had not touched the stove. I had been in the chair the whole time. I didn't touch it. I said, my voice steady, despite the pounding in my chest. I was in the living room. "Don't lie to me. Kendra screamed. Tears started streaming down her face. Tears that appeared on command. Brent is right, we can't trust you. You are going to blow the house up. You are going to burn us alive in our beds. Brent came running in. What is going on? I smell gas. He turned it on. Kendra sobbed, pointing an accusing finger at me. He just turned it on and walked away. He was smiling, Dad. He was smiling while he did it. Brent looked at me with cold fury. He walked over and grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. That is it, he said. No more wandering the house. Get to your room. If you can't be safe, you can't be free. He dragged me to the bedroom and shoved me inside. I heard the lock click. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were trembling. This was gaslighting, pure and simple. They were trying to make me doubt my own reality. They were trying to manufacture a history of incompetence so that when they stood before a judge, they could say, "Look, Your Honor, he puts glasses in the fridge and tries to blow up the house." But the worst was yet to come. Later that afternoon, they let me out. Not because they were kind, but because they wanted an audience. They wanted witnesses. I went out to the front porch. It was my only connection to the outside world. I sat on the swing watching the neighborhood I had lived in for 3 decades. Mrs. Higgins lived next door. She was a sweet woman, a retired librarian who used to bring Althea lemon cakes. She was out in her garden pruning her roses. I raised my hand to wave. "Hello, Martha," I called out. Mrs. Higgins looked up. She didn't smile. She didn't wave back. She looked terrified. She took a step back, dropping her gardening shears. I saw Kendra come out the front door. She rushed down the steps toward the fence. She was wearing a bandage on her arm that hadn't been there an hour ago. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Higgins," Kendra said, her voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Is he bothering you?" I told him not to yell at the neighbors. Mrs. Higgins shook her head, clutching her chest. "Is he okay, Kendra? I heard shouting earlier." I heard glass breaking. Kendra started to cry. She held up her bandaged arm. "He is having a bad day, Mrs. Higgins." He got confused again. He thought I was an intruder. He threw a vase at me. "I am trying so hard, but he is getting so violent. We are scared to sleep at night." I stood up. "That is a lie," I shouted. My voice cracked. "Martha, she is lying. I never touched her." Kendra turned to me, her face a picture of terrified victimhood. "Dad, please stop screaming. You are scaring her. Go back inside. Please just go inside before you hurt someone else." Mrs. Higgins looked at me with pity and fear. "Go inside, Silas," she said softly. "Listen to your daughter. She is just trying to take care of you." I looked at the woman who had known me for 30 years. She looked at me like I was a rabid dog that needed to be put down. They had stolen my reputation. They had stolen my history. In the eyes of my neighbors, I was no longer Silas King, the builder, the good neighbor. I was Silas King, the violent, senile old man. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I knew that anything I said would just confirm their story. The angry old man defending himself is exactly what they wanted. I turned around and walked back into the house. I walked past Kendra, who was hiding a smirk behind her hand. I walked past Brent, who was watching from the window with his arms crossed. I went straight to the hallway bathroom and locked the door. This was the only room in the house without a camera. Brent didn't put one here, probably because even he had limits, or maybe he just didn't want to watch an old man use the toilet. I turned on the faucet, full blast. The rushing water would mask any sound. I knelt down by the sink. Underneath the cabinet where the pipes went into the wall, there was a loose panel. I had installed it myself years ago to access the shut-off valve. I pried the panel open with my fingernails. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag and taped to the back of the drywall, was a cheap burner phone. I had bought it cash 3 months ago when Althea first mentioned she was worried about Brent. I had forgotten about it until the night I escaped. When I came back, I managed to retrieve it from the garage and hide it here. I pulled it out and turned it on. The battery was at 40%. I checked the messages. There was one from Tony Rossi. "Hold tight, Silas. The FBI needs more. They need a direct link to the money. They need him to sign something or say something that proves intent. Don't engage, just record." I opened the voice recorder app. I had left it running earlier when I hid the phone in my pocket during the kitchen incident. I played it back, holding the phone to my ear. The audio was crisp. I heard the hiss of the gas. I heard Kendra laugh softly before she started screaming. I heard her say, "Okay, he is coming. Start crying now." And then the scream. Dad, oh my God, Dad. It was perfect. It proved the performance. I saved the file. I started a new recording. I am in the bathroom, I whispered into the phone. Date is October 14th. They have started the psychological warfare. They are staging accidents. They have alienated the neighbors. They are building a case for emergency guardianship. I am physically safe for now, but they are escalating. I turned off the phone, wrapped it back in the plastic, and taped it back inside the wall. I replaced the panel. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired, red-rimmed, and sunken. I looked like the crazy old man they said I was. But eyes can lie. Behind that tired face, my mind was building a scaffold. I was laying bricks of evidence one by one. Let them play their games. Let them think they were breaking me. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked out. I shuffled my feet, intentionally dragging them. I let my shoulders slump. I walked into the living room. Brent and Kendra were sitting on the couch drinking wine. They stopped talking when I entered. "I am going to bed," I mumbled. "Okay, Dad," Kendra said dismissively. "Try not to burn the house down while we sleep." I walked to my room, but I didn't close the door all the way. I left it cracked just a hair. I laid down on the floor right next to the opening, pressing my ear to the gap. They waited 5 minutes to make sure I was gone. "He is cracking," Brent said, his voice low and smooth. "Did you see his face when the neighbor told him to go inside? He looked like a kicked puppy." "It is working," Kendra agreed. "Mrs. Higgins is going to call the police herself next time. We won't even have to do it." "We need to speed it up, though," Brent said. "I got a call from the investors today. They are getting impatient. The Cayman transfer needs to happen by the end of the week or we lose the whole deal. We can't do it without his signature," Kendra said. "The bank won't release the deeds to the Harlem buildings without the power of attorney." "I know," Brent snapped. "That is why we are doing this. Listen to me." "Friday night." "Friday," Kendra asked. "Yes, Friday. The shelter fundraiser gala. I am hosting it here, in the backyard. We are going to have the mayor here. We are going to have the city council." So Kendra asked. So Brent said, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "We are going to trot Silas out. We are going to put him in a wheelchair. We are going to drug him just enough so he drools and nods. And before the party starts, I am going to put the power of attorney in front of him. I am going to tell him it is an insurance form for his heart medication. He will sign it because he is scared and confused. And then we will parade him in front of the elite of New York as the poor, tragic philanthropist who entrusted his empire to his brilliant son-in-law." And after the party, Kendra asked. After the party, Brent said, "We call Dr. Evans. We have him committed that night, emergency admission. We sell the Harlem buildings on Monday morning, wire the money to the Caymans, and by next week we are sipping Mai Tais on a beach while Silas rots in a state facility." I lay on the floor feeling the cold wood against my cheek. Friday. Today was Wednesday. I had 48 hours. They were going to sell my buildings. The buildings that housed 50 families. Good families. People who paid rent they could afford because I never raised it. Brent was going to sell them to developers who would evict everyone and turn them into luxury condos. He was going to destroy my legacy and my life in one signature. He wanted a signature. I smiled in the dark. It wasn't a nice smile. "You want a signature, Brent," I thought. "I will give you a signature. But you should really check the fine print before you celebrate. Because the hand that holds the pen is the same hand that knows how to swing a sledgehammer. And I am about to bring the whole house down on your head." Thursday night was heavy with a silence that felt more like a held breath than peace. I lay in the guest room recliner listening to the house settle. The timbers groaned and the pipes knocked with the familiar rhythm I had known for 40 years, but tonight every sound felt like a warning. Brent and Kendra were upstairs asleep in the master suite, my suite dreaming of the money they would spend once they finally disposed of me. I checked my watch. It was 2 a.m. This was the time for wolves and thieves, and tonight I had to be both. I needed to get into Brent's office. I needed to find the document he planned to force me to sign on Friday. I stood up slowly, testing my weight on my bad ankle. The pain was a sharp reminder of the cliff, but it focused me. I moved into the hallway. The camera Brent installed in the living room had a blind spot. I knew it did because I watched him install it. He was lazy. He didn't angle it to cover the narrow corridor leading to the study. He assumed I would be too confused to find the shadows. I slid along the wall, my socks silent on the hardwood. I reached the study door. It was closed. I tried the handle gently. Locked. Of course. Brent was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. He kept his schemes behind a brass deadbolt, but he forgot who built this doorframe. I installed this lock set 20 years ago. It was a simple pin tumbler mechanism. I didn't have my lockpicks, but I had something else. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a stiff piece of wire I had taken from a spiral notebook earlier that day. I bent the tip. I knelt down, my knees popping loudly in the quiet hall. I froze, waiting for a reaction from upstairs. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator. I worked the wire into the keyhole. I felt the pins. 1, 2, click. 3, click. The lock turned with a soft snap that sounded like a gunshot to my ears. I opened the door and slipped inside, closing it softly behind me. The office smelled of stale coffee and expensive leather. Moonlight filtered through the blinds, illuminating the desk. It was cluttered with papers, blueprints of my buildings, and bank statements. In the center of the desk sat a thick black leather portfolio. It looked ominous, like a judge gavel. I opened it. Inside, on thick, cream-colored bond paper, was the document. General Power of Attorney. I took a small flashlight from my pocket and read the text. It was comprehensive. It gave Brent Miller full authority to sell real estate, liquidate bank accounts, and make medical decisions for Silas King due to mental incapacitation. It was a death warrant signed in legal jargon. If I put my name on the bottom line of this page, I would lose everything. My buildings, my home, my life. I stared at the paper. Most men would have ripped it up or burned it. But destruction wasn't the plan. Substitution was. I didn't just want to stop him. I wanted to trap him. I wanted him to walk into the bank thinking he was a king and walk out in handcuffs. I moved to the large printer in the corner of the room. It was a high-end machine, the kind that could scan, copy, and print with laser precision. I needed to create a forgery that was so perfect Brent wouldn't hesitate to put it in front of me at the gala. I pulled a flash drive from my sock. Tony Rossi had given it to me before I left his office. On it was a file named The Trap. It was a legal document Tony had drafted. It looked exactly like the power of attorney. It had the same font, the same margins, the same spacing. But the words were different. Instead of granting power to Brent, this document was a confession of embezzlement and voluntary asset transfer. It stated that Brent Miller admitted to stealing funds and was voluntarily transferring all his personal assets, including his hidden offshore accounts and his car, to Silas King as restitution. It was a complete surrender of his life. I turned on the printer. It whirred to life, flashing blue lights. I prayed the noise wouldn't wake them. I quickly scanned the first page of Brent's real document to capture the letterhead and the specific watermark of the paper he used. I needed the texture to match. I needed the feel to be right. I loaded the blank cream paper I found in the printer tray. I plugged in the flash drive. I opened the file on Brent's laptop, which thankfully was only in sleep mode and not fully password locked, yet another sign of his arrogance. He thought he was untouchable in this house. I aligned the digital overlay. I matched the headers. I hit print. The machine began to hum. It was a rhythmic chugging sound that seemed deafening in the silence. Chug, chug, chug. I grabbed a throw pillow from the office sofa and pressed it against the side of the printer, trying to muffle the mechanical noise. "Come on," I whispered. "Come on." The paper slid out. I picked it up. It was warm. I held it next to the original. They were identical twins. The same header, the same footer, the same signature line. But the middle paragraph, the one nobody reads until it is too late, was the difference between slavery and freedom. I was just about to slide the fake document into the leather portfolio when I heard it. Footsteps. They were directly above me. Heavy thuds on the floorboards, then the creak of the stairs. Someone was coming down. I froze. I looked at the desk. The real document and the fake document were both sitting there side by side. The laptop screen was glowing. The printer was still cooling down, giving off a faint smell of toner. I couldn't leave. If I opened the door now, I would run right into them in the hallway. The footsteps hit the bottom of the stairs. They were light. Too light for Brent. It was Kendra. She was walking toward the kitchen, which was right next to the study. I turned off the laptop screen. I grabbed both papers. I shoved the real power of attorney into my waistband against my skin. I placed the fake document inside the leather portfolio and closed it. I dove under the heavy oak desk just as the doorknob turned. My heart hammered against the floorboards. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle the sound of my breathing. From my vantage point, I could see the sliver of light from the hallway widen as the door opened. Shadows stretched across the carpet. I saw bare feet, pink-painted toenails. Kendra. She stood in the doorway. She wasn't moving. She was listening. The printer made a small clicking sound as it went into standby mode. Kendra took a step into the room. "Brent," she whispered. "Are you in here?" I squeezed my eyes shut. If she turned on the light, she would see the chair I had moved. She would see the slightly askew papers on the desk. She would see me curled up in the knee hole of the desk like a frightened animal. She took another step. She was 3 feet away from me. I could smell her lotion, lavender and vanilla, the same scent Althea used to wear when Kendra was a baby. The memory made my chest ache. She stood there for 10 seconds. 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. I prepared myself to fight. If she saw me, I would have to cover her mouth. I would have to restrain her. I didn't want to hurt my daughter, but I wouldn't let her destroy me. Then from the kitchen, the ice maker in the refrigerator cycled and dumped a load of ice with a loud crash. Kendra jumped. She let out a small gasp. She turned around and walked out of the office, pulling the door shut behind her. I heard the latch click. I stayed under the desk for 5 full minutes, listening to her walk to the kitchen, pour a glass of water, and walk back upstairs. I listened until I heard the bedroom door close overhead. I crawled out from under the desk. My knees were shaking so bad I had to hold on to the chair to stand up. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I looked at the portfolio on the desk. It looked innocent, just a black leather folder, but inside was a landmine. I checked the room one last time. I wiped my fingerprints off the printer. I wiped the edge of the desk. I made sure the chair was exactly where it had been. I slipped out of the office and locked the door behind me using the wire tool. It clicked shut, sealing the trap. I crept back to the living room and sat in the recliner. I pulled the real power of attorney document from my waistband. I tore it into tiny pieces. I couldn't throw them in the trash. Brent checked the trash. I put the pieces in my mouth. The paper tasted like chemicals and wood pulp. I chewed them until they were a paste and swallowed them. It was bitter, but it tasted like victory. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. The sun would be up in 3 hours. Friday was coming. The gala was coming. Brent wanted a signature. He wanted me to sign away my life in front of his wealthy friends. He wanted to show off his power. I patted my stomach where the real document was digesting. "You will get your signature, son," I thought. "You will get exactly what you asked for. And when you realize what you have done, it will be too late. The ink will be dry and the handcuffs will be cold." I watched the camera in the corner blink its red eye. I stared right into the lens. "Watch me," I thought. "Watch closely, because you are about to see a magic trick. You are going to see a helpless old man turn into a wrecking ball." Friday morning arrived with the cold precision of a guillotine blade dropping. The sun was bright, but it offered no warmth inside the house that had become my prison. I sat at the dining room table, staring at a plate of cold toast I had no intention of eating. My stomach was a tight knot of nerves and adrenaline. Today was the day. Today was the gala. And today was the day Brent believed he would strip me of everything I had built over 50 years. He walked into the room carrying the black leather portfolio. He looked like a man who had already won the lottery. His suit was sharp navy blue silk, and he smelled of expensive aftershave and arrogance. He didn't even look at me at first. He went to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and took a long, satisfied sip. Then he turned his predator gaze on me. "Good morning, Silas," he said, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Big day today. Huge day." I didn't answer. I just chewed on the inside of my cheek and let my head bob slightly, a tremor I had been practicing for 3 days. Kendra came in behind him. She was wearing a bathrobe and holding a steamer for her dress. She looked pale. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She knew what was about to happen. She knew they were about to rob her father blind, and she was letting it happen. Brent placed the portfolio on the table in front of me. He unzipped it with a slow, deliberate sound. He pulled out the cream-colored document. It lay there innocent and deadly on the dark wood. "I need you to sign this, Silas," he said, sliding a heavy gold fountain pen toward me. I looked at the paper. I knew exactly what it was because I had printed it myself in the middle of the night. It was the confession. It was the transfer of assets. But to Brent, it looked exactly like the power of attorney he had drafted to destroy me. "What is this?" I asked, my voice quavering. "It is for your medical insurance," Dad Kendra said, quickly stepping forward. She sounded breathless. "We need to make sure you are covered, for the hospital, for your heart pills. I looked at her. Another lie. Another brick in the wall she was building between us. I don't need insurance, I mumbled, pushing the paper away. I have insurance. Althea handled it. Althea is gone. Silas. Brent snapped, his patience evaporating instantly. You need to sign this so we can take care of you. Do you want to die of a heart attack because you couldn't afford your medicine? Do you want to end up on the street? He was using fear. It was his favorite tool. I reached for the pen. My hand shook violently. I wasn't faking the shaking entirely. My body was vibrating with the intensity of the moment. If this went wrong, if he looked closely at the text, if he decided to read the paragraph above the signature line, it was over. He would kill me right here in the kitchen. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy and cold. I brought the tip down to the paper. Where do I sign? I asked. Right there, Brent said, pointing to the line at the bottom, next to the X. I lowered the pen. I let the tip hover over the paper. Then I let my hand spasm. The pen slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the table, rolling across the document. A drop of black ink splattered onto the wood. Oops, I whispered. Brent slammed his hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. Pick it up, he roared. Pick it up and sign the damn paper. I cowered, shrinking back into my chair. I am sorry, I whined. My hands. They don't work right. Pick it up. Silas. Brent yelled again. We don't have time for this. The caterers are coming in an hour. I reached for the pen again. I fumbled with it. I dropped it again. This time it rolled onto the floor. I started to bend down to get it moving with agonizing slowness. My bad ankle protested. I groaned. For God's sake, Brent shouted. He marched around the table. He bent down and snatched the pen from the floor. He grabbed my right hand. His grip was painful, crushing my fingers together. He jammed the pen into my hand and wrapped his fingers around mine, forcing a grip. You are going to sign this, Silas, he hissed in my ear. You are going to sign it right now, or I swear I will have Dr. Evans commit you before lunch. I will have you thrown in a padded room where you will never see the sun again. I looked up at him. I let him see the fear in my eyes. It wasn't fear of him. It was fear of failing Althea. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Brent, don't hurt me. Sign it, he commanded. He guided my hand to the paper. He pressed down. I let the tip of the pen touch the fiber of the paper. This was it. The point of no return. I stiffened my wrist. I fought against his grip just enough to make it look like a struggle, but not enough to stop the movement. I wrote my name, Silas King. The letters were jagged and uneven, forced by the pressure of his hand over mine, but they were legible. It was my signature, and it was binding. Done, Brent said. He released my hand. I dropped the pen. It rolled away, forgotten. Brent snatched the paper up. He held it up to the light, checking the signature. He smiled. It was the smile of a wolf that had just taken down a stag. Finally, he said, he didn't read the text. He didn't check the clauses. He didn't look at the title, which I had carefully matched to his font, but changed the wording of. He was so blinded by his own greed, so certain of his own victory, that he didn't even look at what he had won. He opened the portfolio and slid the document inside. He zipped it shut. The sound was final. He looked at Kendra. We are good, he said. Call the bank. Tell them I will be faxing the authorization on Monday morning. Tell the investors the funds are secured. Kendra let out a long breath. She looked at me. There was a moment of hesitation in her eyes, a flicker of something that might have been regret, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Okay, she said. I will call them. Brent turned back to me. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could smell the coffee on his breath. You did good, Silas, he said. Now listen to me very carefully. I looked at him, blinking slowly. Tonight is the gala, he said. There are going to be a lot of important people here. People with money. People I need to impress. You are going to be there. But you are not going to be Silas the builder. You are going to be Silas the tragic figure. He walked to the hallway closet and pulled out a wheelchair. We didn't own a wheelchair. He must have rented it or bought it just for this. You are going to sit in this, he said, parking it next to the table. You are not going to walk. You are not going to talk. If anyone speaks to you, you just smile and nod. You look frail. You look grateful. Do you understand? I nodded. Good, he said, because this is your last night in this house. My heart hammered against my ribs. What I whispered. Brent laughed. He patted my cheek, a hard, stinging pat. "Did you really think we were going to keep you here?" he asked. "After everything. After the fire hazard. After the wandering. No Silas. I have already made the arrangements. The ambulance is coming at 11 o'clock tonight, right after the party ends." He straightened up, adjusting his tie. "We found a place for you. It is upstate. Very quiet, very secure. They specialize in difficult cases. Once you go through those doors, you don't come out. Not until you are in a box." He picked up the portfolio. He tucked it under his arm like a trophy. "So enjoy the party, Silas," he said. "Eat some cake. Look at the lights. Because tomorrow you are going to be staring at a white wall for the rest of your life." He turned and walked out of the kitchen whistling. Kendra stood there for a moment. She looked at the wheelchair. She looked at me. "It is for the best, Dad," she whispered. "You will be safer there." Then she turned and followed her husband, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I sat there listening to the silence. They were going to ship me off tonight. 11 o'clock. That was my deadline. I had 12 hours. I looked at the wheelchair. It was shiny and chrome, a prop for their play. I looked at the spot on the table where the ink had stained the wood. "You think you won, Brent," I thought. "You think you hold the keys to the kingdom. But you just signed your own confession. You just handed me your life, your money, and your freedom." I slowly stood up. I walked over to the wheelchair. I gripped the handles. My knuckles were white. "I am not going to a home," I whispered to the empty room, "and I am not going to be a prop. Tonight, in front of all your rich friends, in front of the people you are trying to scam, I am going to stand up. And when I stand up, you are going to fall." I went to the bathroom to retrieve my burner phone. I had one text message to send. It was to Tony Rossi. "It is done." He signed, "Bring the cavalry. Tonight, 10 p.m. I hit send. Then I went back to the living room, sat in my recliner, and waited for the show to begin. I closed my eyes and pictured Althea. "Watch this, Althea," I thought. "Watch what I do for you." By 8 o'clock that evening, my backyard had been transformed into a stage for the devil. The humble garden Althea had tended for 40 years was gone, covered by white tents, rental flooring, and tables draped in silk. String lights twinkled in the trees I had planted when Kendra was a baby, casting a soft golden glow over the crime scene. I sat in the chrome wheelchair parked in the corner like a piece of unwanted furniture. My head lolled to the side and my mouth hung slightly open. To the casual observer, I was a vegetable, a man whose mind had turned to mush, leaving only a husk behind. Kendra had come to my room an hour before the guests arrived. She had a syringe in her hand. "It is just a little something to help you relax, Dad," she had said, her voice trembling just a little. "We do not want you getting agitated with all the people." She did not know that I had found her stash in the bathroom cabinet 2 hours prior. I had emptied the sedative ampule and refilled it with saline solution from my contact lens supply. When the needle went in, I didn't flinch. I let my eyelids drop. I let my muscles go slack. I played the part of the broken old man so well that she let out a sigh of relief and kissed my forehead. A Judas kiss. Now I sat there watching the vultures circle. The guests were the elite of the city, or at least the people Brent desperately wanted to be elite. There were bankers in $5,000 suits, politicians with fake smiles, and wealthy widows looking for a cause to throw money at. They drank champagne paid for with my savings. They ate canapes paid for with credit cards taken out in my name. Brent moved through the crowd like a shark in a koi pond. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He laughed too loud. He shook hands too vigorously. He was high on adrenaline and the promise of millions. He steered people toward the large presentation boards set up near the gazebo. The boards showed glossy renderings of glass towers. They were titled The King Legacy Project. He was selling my apartment buildings in Harlem. He was pitching them as a redevelopment opportunity. He was telling these people he was going to bulldoze the homes of 50 families to build luxury condos, and he was using my name to do it. I gripped the armrests of the wheelchair. My knuckles turned white, but I kept my hands hidden under the blanket Kendra had draped over my legs. The rage in my chest was a physical weight, hot and heavy. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to flip the tables. I wanted to scream that this man was a thief and a liar. But I waited. Tony Rossi had told me to wait. The trap had to be sprung at the exact right moment. A waiter passed by with a tray of drinks. He looked at me with pity and moved on. I recognized him. He wasn't from the catering company. He was an agent named Miller. Tony had briefed me. Half the staff tonight were undercover FBI agents waiting for the signal. They were refilling glasses and clearing plates while wearing wires. The music lowered. A spotlight cut through the evening gloom and hit the small stage erected by the rose bushes. Brent stepped into the light. He held a microphone like a rock star. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice echoing off the siding of my house. "Thank you all for coming tonight. This is a historic evening." The crowd applauded. Kendra stepped up beside him wearing a black dress that cost more than my first truck. She looked beautiful and tragic. She linked her arm through Brent's and rested her head on his shoulder. "Tonight is bittersweet for us," Brent continued, his voice dropping to a somber, reverent tone. "As many of you know, we recently lost the matriarch of this family, Althea King. She was the heart of this home." He paused for effect. I saw a few women in the front row dab their eyes. It made me sick. He had killed her, and now he was using her memory as a prop. "But life goes on," Brent said, his voice rising with inspiration. "And before she passed, Althea and her husband Silas had a vision. They wanted to use their assets to change the city. They wanted to build a future." He gestured toward me. The spotlight swung around, blinding me for a second. I blinked slowly, keeping my mouth slack. "My father-in-law, Silas King, is here with us tonight," Brent said. "Tragically, his health has declined rapidly since Althea passing. The grief has been too much for his mind. But in his lucid moments, he made his wishes clear. He entrusted me with the stewardship of his estate. He asked me to take the burden from his shoulders so he could rest." The crowd turned to look at me. Hundreds of eyes. I saw pity. I saw dismissal. They saw a pathetic old man who needed a hero. They saw Brent as that hero. So tonight, Brent announced, raising a glass, "We are launching the King Legacy Fund. We are opening investment for the redevelopment of the Harlem properties. We already have commitments for $5 million, but we are looking for partners who share our vision." He smiled that winning, predatory smile. "Silas cannot speak for himself anymore, but I know if he could, he would say thank you. He would say, 'Let us build something great.'" The crowd erupted in applause. People cheered. Brent raised his glass higher, drinking in the adoration. He thought he had done it. He thought he had successfully stolen my life in front of 100 witnesses and made them applaud the theft. Kendra clapped too, tears streaming down her face. She was crying because she was relieved. She thought the hard part was over. She thought I was neutralized. The applause died down and the music started again. People began to mingle, moving toward the donation tables where credit card readers were waiting. A group of investors surrounded Brent, shaking his hand, clapping him on the back. Then they turned toward me. Brent led them over like a zookeeper showing off a tamed animal. "This is Mr. Sterling," Brent said, introducing a tall man with silver hair. "He is putting in $500,000, Silas. Isn't that wonderful?" Mr. Sterling leaned down. He smelled of cigars. "You have a good son-in-law here, Mr. King," he said, speaking loudly and slowly like I was deaf. "He is going to take good care of your legacy. You don't have to worry about a thing. Just rest now." I looked at him. I looked at Brent, who was standing behind him, smirking. Just rest. That is what they all wanted. The old man to go to sleep so the young wolves could eat. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was a woman wearing too much jewelry. "It is so sad," she whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear. "He doesn't even know where he is. At least the money will be put to good use." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I needed pain to keep me focused. I needed pain to keep me from lunging at Brent's throat. Not yet, I told myself. Not yet. I looked past the crowd. I looked toward the side gate of the yard, the one that led to the alley. It was shadowed away from the festive lights. There was movement there. A figure stepped out of the darkness. It wasn't a waiter. It wasn't a guest. It was a man in a rumpled brown suit holding a battered leather briefcase. Tony Rossi. He stood by the gate scanning the crowd. He looked terrified but determined. Behind him I saw shadows moving in the alley. Dark shapes. Tactical gear. Brent didn't see him. He was too busy laughing at a joke Mr. Sterling had made. Kendra didn't see him. She was busy accepting condolences from the mayor's wife. Tony's eyes locked with mine across the yard. He raised his eyebrows in a silent question. "Are you ready, Silas?" I looked at Brent one last time. I looked at the man who murdered my wife. I looked at the daughter who betrayed me. I looked at the house I built, which they had turned into a den of thieves. I slowly lifted my right hand from under the blanket. I wasn't shaking anymore. My hand was steady as a rock. I looked at Tony. I nodded once. A sharp, decisive motion. Tony stepped forward into the light. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small black remote. It looked like a car key fob. He pointed it at the main power box on the side of the house. Click. The string lights died. The spotlights died. The music cut out with a dying groan. The backyard was plunged into sudden heavy darkness. The crowd gasped. A woman screamed. What happened? Someone yelled. Is it a blackout? In the darkness, I threw off the blanket. I planted my feet on the ground. I ignored the pain in my ankle. I gripped the armrests of the wheelchair and pushed myself up. I stood tall. I stood strong. The emergency lights I had installed along the roofline flickered on, bathing the yard in a harsh white security glare. The crowd blinked in the sudden brightness. They looked around, confused. And then they saw me. They saw the invalid standing upright. They saw the senile old man looking like a titan. Brent spun around. He saw me standing there. His jaw dropped. Silas, he stammered. Sit down. You are confused. I took a step forward, then another. I walked toward the stage. The crowd parted before me like the Red Sea. They sensed the change. They sensed the danger. I am not confused. Brent, I said. My voice was loud, clear, and booming. It was the voice that had shouted orders over jackhammers for 40 years. I walked up the steps to the gazebo. Brent backed away from me. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. You said I couldn't speak for myself, I said, grabbing the microphone from the stand. I turned to the crowd. I looked at Mr. Sterling. I looked at the mayor. I can speak just fine, I said. And I have a hell of a story to tell you. I pointed to the back of the yard. Mr. Rossi, I said, bring the box. Tony Rossi walked through the crowd holding the metal lockbox high above his head. The silence in the yard was absolute. The only sound was the heavy tread of justice coming to collect its due. Tony Rossi walked past the security guards who were too stunned by the sudden blackout to stop him. He didn't say a word. He just marched up the steps of the gazebo and placed the metal lockbox on the podium right next to Brent's microphone. The sound of the heavy steel hitting the wood echoed through the silent yard like a gavel strike. Brent stared at the box, his face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray under the harsh emergency floodlights. He looked at the box, then at me, then at Tony. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He was watching his nightmare manifest in physical form. Get that out of here, he finally whispered. His voice was shaking. Get that trash off my stage. Tony didn't move. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. He held it up so the crowd could see it. It was small, silver, and devastating. I tried to tell you, Brent Tony said, his voice calm and professional. I tried to tell you that Silas King is not a man you play games with, but you didn't listen. You were too busy counting money that wasn't yours. Tony walked over to the laptop that controlled the massive projection screen behind the stage. The screen had been frozen on a picture of the architectural rendering of the glass towers Brent wanted to build. The future. The lie. Tony plugged in the drive. No, Brent screamed. He lunged toward the laptop. Don't you touch that. Security. Remove this man. But the security guards didn't move. They were looking at the men in the shadows, the ones wearing tactical vests who had quietly stepped out from the alley. They knew better than to interfere. Tony hit a key. The image on the giant screen flickered. The glass towers vanished. The logo for the King Legacy Fund dissolved into static. A new image appeared. It was grainy and low angle. It looked like it had been filmed from a button on a shirt or a hidden device on a shelf. The timestamp in the corner read 2 weeks ago. The audio boomed through the speakers, loud and distorted, but perfectly clear. I am telling you, she is taking too long to die. The voice was Brent's. The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the yard. On the screen, Brent was pacing in my kitchen. He was holding a glass of whiskey. He looked angry, impatient. We upped the dose last week, he said on the video. The doctor said her heart should have given out by now. She is tough, too tough. Then Kendra walked into the frame. My daughter. The crowd watched as she poured herself a drink and leaned against the counter. Maybe we should switch to the insulin, she suggested, her voice cool and detached. It is harder to trace. If we keep using the heart meds, Silas might notice the bottles depleting. I don't care if he notices, Brent snarled on the screen. He is an illiterate bricklayer. He doesn't know what digoxin does. He thinks it is a vitamin. Just make sure she drinks the tea tonight. I want this over with. We have the Cayman transfer scheduled for Monday. The video cut to static for a second, then jumped to a new scene. This one was darker, filmed in the living room. It was the night they planned to commit me. The old man is next, Brent said on the screen, pointing a finger at the camera he didn't know was there. As soon as Althea is in the ground, we move on him. We get the power of attorney, and then we dump him. Where Kendra asked. Who cares? Brent laughed. Somewhere cheap, somewhere with a high mortality rate. He won't last 6 months without his wife. We will sell the buildings, liquidate the accounts, and be gone before anyone realizes he is rotting in a state ward. The video ended. The screen went black. For 10 seconds there was absolute silence in the backyard. It was a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush bones. I looked at the crowd. I saw horror. I saw disgust. Mr. Sterling, the man who was about to invest $500,000, had dropped his cigar. His mouth was open. The mayor was backing away, looking at Brent like he was a contagious disease. Then the screaming started. You lied to us, a woman shouted from the back. You killed her. Murders, another man yelled. Brent stood on the stage trembling. He looked like a cornered rat. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd, then at me. His eyes were wide and wild. The mask of the sophisticated banker had completely shattered, revealing the desperate criminal underneath. Turn it off, he screamed. His voice cracked. It is a fake. It is AI. They made it up. It is a deep fake. He ran to the laptop and slammed it shut. He ripped the cords out of the wall, sparks flying. Don't look at that, he yelled at the crowd, waving his arms frantically. Listen to me. That man over there, he pointed at Tony. He is a con artist. And Silas is senile. He doesn't know what is real. He fabricated this to ruin me because he is jealous of my success. He was unraveling. He was sweating profusely, his hair falling into his eyes. He looked at Kendra, who was standing frozen by the drink table. Tell them, Kendra, he shouted. Tell them your father is crazy. Tell them we loved Althea. Kendra didn't move. She was staring at me. Her face was pale. She looked at the guests, who were now pulling out their phones, recording the meltdown. She looked at the police officers moving in from the perimeter. She realized it was over. Shut up, Brent, she whispered. Just shut up. No, I won't shut up, Brent roared. He turned back to me. You did this, he spat, pointing a shaking finger at my face. You ungrateful old parasite. I took care of you. I gave you a place to live. And this is how you repay me. You try to frame me with fake videos. He jumped off the stage. He hit the ground running. He was coming for me. I sat in the wheelchair watching him come. He was fast fueled by rage and terror. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the only witness who could send him to the electric chair. Silas, look out, Tony yelled. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cower. Brent reached me. He grabbed the lapels of my jacket and yanked me forward. I should have killed you myself, he hissed, his face inches from mine. I should have pushed you down the stairs the day Althea died. Spittle flew from his mouth, hitting my cheek. His eyes were black holes of hate. Say it, he screamed, shaking me. Tell them it is a lie. Tell them you are crazy, or I swear to God I will snap your neck right here. I looked into his eyes. I saw the fear behind the anger. I saw the weakness. I reached up, my hands big and rough, scarred from 50 years of labor wrapped around his wrists. Brent tried to pull away, but my grip was like iron. He looked down at my hands, surprised by the strength. I pulled his hands off my jacket slowly, deliberately. I pushed him back. He stumbled, losing his balance. I placed my hands on the armrests of the wheelchair. I pushed down. My bad ankle flared with pain, but I ignored it. I engaged my core muscles, the ones built from lifting timber and stone. I stood up. I rose from the chair like a statue coming to life. I stood to my full height of 6'2". I towered over him. The crowd gasped again. He can walk, someone whispered. Brent looked up at me. He took a step back, tripping over his own feet. He fell onto the grass, scrambling backward on his hands and knees like a crab. You, he stammered. You can stand. I took a step toward him. My boots crunched on the gravel. I can stand, I said. My voice was deep and resonant, booming across the yard without a microphone. I can walk, and I can see. I pointed a finger at him. A finger that had built skyscrapers. I saw you steal from my accounts, Brent. I saw you poison my wife. I saw you terrorize my daughter, and I saw you try to bury me alive. I took another step. He scrambled further back, hitting the edge of the stage. He had nowhere to go. You called me crazy, I said, looming over him. You told these people I was confused. You told them I was a vegetable. I leaned down, getting right in his face. I am not crazy, Brent, I said softly so only he in the front row could hear. But you are about to be. Because where you are going, the walls are padded, and the only thing you will have to invest is your time. And you are going to have a lot of it. Brent looked at me, paralyzed by the sudden shift in power. The old man he thought he had broken was gone. In his place was the patriarch, the builder, the father who had come to clean house. I straightened up and looked at the officers who were now closing in. Get him off my lawn, I said. 2 agents grabbed Brent by the arms and hauled him up. He started screaming again, thrashing and kicking. I have a power of attorney, he yelled. He signed it. I own everything. You can't arrest me. I am the legal guardian. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the black leather portfolio he had carried around all day like a shield. I had swiped it from the table when the lights went out. I unzipped it. I pulled out the cream-colored document. You mean this? I asked, holding it up. Brent stopped struggling. He stared at the paper. Yes, he panted. Yes, that is a legal document. He signed it this morning. It gives me everything. Read it. Read it to them. I smiled. It was a cold smile. Okay, I said. I will read it. I turned the document toward the light. Title, I read. Confession of Embezzlement and Voluntary Asset Transfer. I looked at Brent. His eyes bulged. What he whispered. I continued reading. I, Brent Miller, hereby confess to the theft of $2 million from the King estate. I admit to the poisoning of Althea King. And I voluntarily transfer all personal assets, including offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, to Silas King as partial restitution for my crimes. I turned the page. Signed, I said, pointing to the jagged scrawl at the bottom. Silas King, witness. I pointed to the signature next to mine. And signed by Brent Miller. Brent let out a sound that wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul breaking. He realized what he had done. He realized he had signed his own confession without even reading it because he was too arrogant to check. No, he screamed. No. That is a trick. He switched the papers. He lunged for me again, but the agent slammed him into the turf. Handcuffs clicked. It is over, Brent, I said, closing the portfolio. You didn't just lose the game, son. You handed me the rule book. I watched them drag him away, kicking and screaming, his tuxedo stained with grass and dirt. Then I turned to face the crowd. I turned to face my daughter. Kendra was standing alone. Her husband was gone, her mother was dead, and her father, the man she tried to destroy, was standing center stage holding the evidence of her betrayal. She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with tears. Dad, she whispered. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And in that look, I said everything that needed to be said. The party was over. The chaos in the backyard had barely settled when the atmosphere shifted from confusion to lethal terror. The guests were backing away, their hands raised, their eyes wide with the primal fear of prey facing a predator. Brent Miller, the man who had worn a tuxedo like a second skin just an hour ago, now looked like a cornered animal. He reached into the waistband of his trousers. I knew what he was reaching for. I had seen the bulge in his jacket earlier that evening. He wasn't carrying a weapon because he feared the police. He was carrying it because he owed money to men who did not use lawsuits to settle debts. He pulled out a compact black pistol. It looked small in his shaking hand, but deadly enough to end a life in a heartbeat. The crowd screamed a jagged, terrified sound that tore through the night air. "Nobody move!" Brent roared. His voice was raw, shredded by panic. He lunged sideways. He wasn't aiming at me. He wasn't aiming at Tony Rossi. He grabbed the person closest to him. Kendra. He wrapped his left arm around her neck, dragging her backward. He jammed the barrel of the gun against her temple. My daughter let out a strangled yelp, her hands clawing at his sleeve. Her expensive black dress bunched up as he hauled her against his chest, using her body as a human shield. "Back off!" Brent screamed, swinging the gun wildly toward the advancing officers before pressing it back to Kendra's head. "I swear to God I will paint this lawn with her brains. Back off or she dies." I stood on the steps of the gazebo, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was my daughter, the girl who had betrayed me, the woman who had poisoned her mother. But she was still my blood. Seeing a gun pressed to her head triggered an instinct in me that was older than anger and deeper than grief. Brent, Look at me, I said. My voice was steady, though my insides were churning. Put the gun down, son. There is no way out of this yard. You are surrounded. Shut up, old man, Brent spat. You did this. You ruined everything. I had it all under control until you started walking. He dragged Kendra further back toward the French doors that led into the house. He was trying to get inside to fortify himself. Let me go, Kendra sobbed. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. Brent, please, you are hurting me. It is me. It is Kendra. She still didn't understand. She still thought she was his partner. She thought there was a we in this nightmare. She didn't realize that to a man like Brent, everyone is disposable, even his wife, especially his wife. The FBI agents froze. They had their weapons drawn, but they couldn't take the shot. Not with a hostage. Not with a civilian in the line of fire. The standoff hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was Kendra weeping and Brent ragged breathing. Brent, listen to me, I said, stepping down from the gazebo. I moved slowly, keeping my hands visible. You can't escape. The money is gone. The investors know the truth. The only thing you have left is your life. Don't throw it away for nothing. It isn't nothing, Brent yelled. He was sweating profusely now, the drops glistening under the harsh emergency lights. I have rights. I have the papers. You signed them. I own this house. I own you. He was clinging to his delusion like a drowning man clinging to a stone. He truly believed that a piece of paper could save him from a bullet. We can make a deal, he shouted at the agents. I want a car. I want a flight to a non-extradition country. And I am taking her with me. He jerked Kendra head back. She screamed again, a high-pitched sound of pure terror. Honey, please, Kendra begged. Why are you doing this? We can fix this. Just talk to them. She reached up to touch his face. It was a gesture of intimacy of a wife trying to calm her husband. It was the wrong move. Brent's face twisted into a mask of pure, unfiltered hatred. He looked down at her not with love, not even with recognition, but with the disgust one might feel for a broken tool. Shut up, he hissed. He took his hand off the gun for a split second, not to surrender, but to strike. He backhanded her across the face. The sound of the slap cracked through the yard, louder than the sirens wailing in the distance. Kendra's head snapped to the side. Her legs gave out and she slumped against him, held up only by his arm around her throat. You useless idiot, Brent screamed at her. Fix this. There is no fixing this. You ruined it. You were supposed to keep the old man sedated. You were supposed to make sure he drank the tea. You couldn't even do that right. Kendra looked up at him. Her lips split and bleeding. Her eyes were wide with shock. It wasn't the physical pain that stunned her. It was the words. What she whispered. You heard me, Brent snarled. You are weak, Kendra. You were always weak. I had to hold your hand through the whole thing. I had to tell you exactly how many drops to put in her drink. I had to force you to sign the checks. He looked up at the crowd, his eyes manic. She is in on it, he yelled, desperate to spread the blame. She is not a hostage. She is an accomplice. She signed for the digoxin. She mixed it into the food. She watched her mother choke and did nothing because she wanted the jewelry. She is just as guilty as I am. Kendra let out a wail that tore at my soul. It was the sound of her world collapsing, the illusion of love, the fantasy of the perfect marriage, the justification for her crimes. It all shattered in that instant. She realized she hadn't killed her mother for a future. She had killed her mother for a man who despised her. You said you loved me, she screamed, struggling against his grip. You said we were doing this for us. I used you. Brent laughed, a cruel barking sound. I needed access to the accounts. I needed a signature. You were just the key to the lockbox, Kendra. And now that the box is open, I don't need the key anymore. He raised the gun again, pointing it at her head. I watched my daughter break. I watched her spirit crumble under the weight of the truth. She went limp in his arms, her sobbing turning into a low keen of despair. I had to act. I couldn't let him kill her. Not after everything. I took another step forward. Brent, look at me, I roared, using the voice that could command a construction site over the roar of heavy machinery. Look at me, you coward. He turned his eyes to me. The gun wavered. You want a target? I said, spreading my arms wide. Here I am. I am the one who swapped the papers. I am the one who recorded you. I am the one who brought the FBI to your party. Shoot me." "No," Dad Kendra screamed. "Shoot me," I repeated, walking toward him. My boots crunched on the grass. I ignored the pain in my ankle. I ignored the fear. "Shoot me and end it. But before you pull that trigger, take a look around you. Look at the windows." Brent's eyes flicked to the house. The French doors were reflecting the scene like mirrors. "Look closer," I said. Suddenly the glass of the French doors exploded inward. It wasn't a bullet. It was a synchronized breach. From the roof, from the side alleys, from the interior of the house, figures in black tactical gear poured into the space. The waiters, the men and women who had been serving champagne and clearing plates dropped their trays. The sound of shattering glass filled the air as they drew their service weapons. They weren't catering staff. They were federal agents. FBI dropped the weapon. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Red laser dots danced across Brent's chest. 5, 10, 20. He was painted with light. He looked around wildly. He saw the tactical teams rappelling from the roof. He saw the agents emerging from the crowd. He saw that he was completely and utterly surrounded. The arrogance finally drained out of him, leaving only fear. He looked at the gun in his hand. He looked at the army facing him. He realized that if he pulled the trigger, he would be dead before my daughter's body hit the ground. "Drop it," I commanded. Brent's hand shook. He looked at me one last time. There was no hate left in his eyes, only the pathetic confusion of a man who thought he was the smartest person in the room and just realized he was the fool. He shoved Kendra away from him. She fell to the grass, weeping, curling into a ball. Brent raised his hands, the gun dangling from his finger. "Don't shoot," he screamed. "I surrender. Don't shoot me." He dropped the gun. It landed in the soft grass with a harmless thud. Before it even settled, the SWAT team was on him. 3 officers tackled him to the ground. His face was pressed into the dirt of the garden my wife had loved. I watched as they cuffed his hands behind his back. I watched as they hauled him to his feet. His tuxedo was ruined, stained with grass and mud. He looked small. He looked weak. But even as they dragged him away, he couldn't let go of the lie. He twisted his head back, looking at me, looking at the crowd, looking for anyone who would listen. "I have rights," he screamed, his voice cracking. "I have the papers. He signed them. You saw him sign them. That old man gave me everything. I am the legal guardian. I have money. I can hire the best lawyers in the city. You can't do this to me." He was still screaming about the power of attorney as they shoved him into the back of an armored vehicle. He didn't know yet. He didn't know that the paper he was betting his life on was the confession that would seal his fate. I stood in the middle of the ruined party. The guests were silent, watching the end of the dynasty that never was. I looked at Kendra. She was still on the ground, surrounded by paramedics. She wasn't fighting. She wasn't trying to explain. She was just crying, mourning the life she threw away for a lie. Tony Rossi walked up to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "It is over, Silas," he said softly. "We got him." I looked at the flashing lights of the police cars reflecting off the glass of my home. "It is not over, Tony," I said, watching them check Kendra for injuries. "We got him, but we lost everything else." I walked over to where my daughter lay. I looked down at her. She looked up at me, her eyes full of fear and shame. "Dad," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And then I turned away. The builder in me knew that sometimes you can't repair a structure. Sometimes the rot is too deep. Sometimes you have to tear it all down and leave the rubble where it falls. The dust from the breach was still settling in the cool night air, illuminated by the strobing red and blue lights of a dozen federal vehicles. The backyard looked like a war zone, littered with overturned tables, shattered glass, and the ruined dreams of a man who thought he could steal a legacy he had not built. Brent Miller was on his knees, his tuxedo jacket torn at the shoulder, his expensive haircut ruined by sweat and dirt. He was cuffed, his hands behind his back, but his mouth was still moving, still spitting out lies and threats like a machine gun that had run out of bullets but kept clicking. "I have rights," he screamed at the FBI agent standing over him. "You cannot do this. I am the legal guardian of this estate. I have the papers. Check the briefcase. Check the damn briefcase." He was clinging to that black leather portfolio like a drowning man clings to a piece of driftwood. He truly believed it was his salvation. He believed that a piece of paper could override the mountain of evidence we had just dropped on him. He believed that the law was a tool he could twist to his will, just like he had tried to twist me. The lead agent, a tall woman with eyes like flint, looked at Brent with the kind of exhaustion reserved for criminals who talk too much. She signaled to a junior officer who picked up the leather portfolio from where it had fallen on the grass. He handed it to her. She held it up. "Is this what you are talking about?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yes," Brent panted, nodding frantically. "Yes, open it. The power of attorney is inside. It proves everything. It proves Silas King is mentally incompetent and that I have full control over his assets. It proves I have the authority to make financial decisions. You are arresting the wrong man. You are violating my civil rights." I stood a few feet away watching him. My ankle was throbbing with a dull, persistent ache, but I did not lean on the wheelchair. I stood on my own 2 feet. Tony Rossi stood beside me, his face grim but satisfied. He looked at me and I nodded. It was time to pull the final brick out of the wall. Agent Tony said, stepping forward. "I am Mr. King, attorney. If you would permit me, I believe I can clarify the nature of the document inside that portfolio." The agent looked at Tony, then at me. She saw the resolve in my eyes. She handed the portfolio to Tony. "Be my guest," she said. Tony unzipped the leather case. The sound was a soft hiss in the sudden quiet of the yard. The guests who hadn't fled were watching from the perimeter, their faces pale masks of shock. Kendra was still sobbing on the ground, attended by a paramedic, but even she went silent, watching the portfolio. Tony pulled out the cream-colored document. He handled it with care like it was a loaded weapon. He smoothed it out under the harsh glare of the tactical lights. Brent was grinning now, a manic, desperate rictus. "Read it," he shouted. "Read it to them, Rossi. Tell them who owns this house. Tell them who owns the money. Tell them I am in charge." Tony looked at Brent over the top of his glasses. He looked at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. "I will read it," Brent Tony said calmly. "But I do not think it says what you think it says." He cleared his throat and began to read aloud, his voice projecting clearly across the ruined garden. "This document is titled Confession of Embezzlement and Voluntary Asset Transfer." Brent blinkered. The grin faltered. What he whispered. Tony continued reading, ignoring him. "I, Brent Miller, being of sound mind, hereby confess to the systematic theft of funds from the estate of Silas and Althea King, totaling over $2 million. I admit to the falsification of financial records. I admit to the illegal procurement and administration of digoxin to Althea King, resulting in her death." "No," Brent screamed. He tried to lunge forward, but the agent held him down. "No. That is a lie. That is not what it says. It says power of attorney. I wrote it myself. I printed it myself." Tony raised his voice, drowning out Brent protests. "Furthermore, as restitution for these crimes, I, Brent Miller, voluntarily transfer all personal assets, including the contents of offshore accounts located in the Cayman Islands, under the shell company BM Holdings to Silas King, effective immediately. This transfer includes real estate vehicles and all liquid cash." He stopped reading and looked down at Brent. "Does that sound like a power of attorney to you, son?" he asked. Brent was shaking his head violently, his eyes wide with panic. "You switched them," he yelled at me. "You switched the papers. I didn't sign that. I signed the insurance form. You tricked me." I stepped closer to him. My shadow fell over his face. "I didn't trick you, Brent," I said. "I gave you exactly what you asked for. You wanted a signature. You were so desperate for it you didn't even look at what you were forcing me to sign." "Show him the signature, Tony," I said. Tony turned the document around. He knelt down so the paper was inches from Brent's face. "Look closely," Tony said, pointing to the bottom of the page. Brent stared at the paper. He saw the jagged, uneven scrawl of my name, Silas King, on the claimant line. But then his eyes drifted to the right, to the witness line. There, in bold blue ink, was his own signature. Brent Miller. He had signed it. In the kitchen, while he was crushing my hand, while he was threatening to throw me in an asylum, he had signed as the witness to his own destruction. He had been so focused on my hand, on making sure I didn't mess up the paper, that he had blindly put his own name on the line next to mine to validate the document. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. His mouth opened, but no air came in. He made a small, choking sound. "I signed it," he whispered. "I signed it." "Yes, you did," I said. "And because you signed it in front of a witness, me and technically your wife who was in the room, it is a binding legal contract. You just confessed to murder and theft, Brent. And you gave me back every single dime you stole plus interest." Brent looked up at me. The arrogance was gone. The rage was gone. All that was left was the hollow terror of a man who realizes he has dug his own grave and jumped in. But he stammered, "But I am smart. I am smarter than you. You are just a bricklayer." I leaned down, my face close to his. "I am a builder's son," I said. "And the first rule of building is that you always check the foundation before you start construction. You built your whole life on a foundation of lies and arrogance. All I had to do was pull one pin and watch it all come down." The FBI agent stepped in. "That is enough," she said. She hauled Brent to his feet. "Brent Miller, you are under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and the murder of Althea King. You have the right to remain silent." Brent didn't fight this time. He was limp. His legs dragged through the grass as they pulled him toward the armored van. He kept looking back at me over his shoulder. His eyes were wide, filled with a horror that went beyond prison. He was looking at me like I was a monster. He was wrong. I wasn't a monster. I was just a man who loved his wife enough to become one for a little while. I watched them shove him into the back of the van. The heavy doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed in my bones. It was over. The wolf was caged. I turned back to the yard. The guests were gone, herded out by the police. The only people left were the agents collecting evidence, Tony Rossi and Kendra. Kendra was sitting on the edge of the stage, a paramedic checking her blood pressure. She looked small and broken. Her makeup was smeared and her expensive dress was torn. She wasn't looking at the van. She was looking at me. I walked over to her. My ankle was screaming in protest, but I didn't stop. I stopped a few feet away. "Dad," she said, her voice cracking. I looked at her. I looked at the child I had raised. I looked at the woman who had watched her husband mix poison into her mother tea. "Don't call me that," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 1,000 disappointments. She flinched as if I had hit her. "But I didn't know he was going to kill you," she sobbed. "I swear, Dad. I thought we were just going to put you in a home. I didn't know about the poison. I didn't know about Mom." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the orange pill bottle I had found in her purse days ago. Digoxin. I held it up. "This was in your purse, Kendra," I said. "You knew. You carried the weapon. You watched her fade away day by day, and you did nothing. You let him convince you that money was worth more than her life." She stared at the bottle. She couldn't deny it. "The evidence was in my hand." "He made me," she whispered. "He said we needed the money. He said he was in trouble with bad people. He said they would kill us if we didn't pay. So you decided to kill us instead." I asked. "You decided your parents were disposable." She put her face in her hands and wept. It was an ugly sound, the sound of a child who realizes that no amount of crying will fix what they broke. The FBI agent walked over. "Mr. King," she said gently, "we need to take her in for questioning. She is a material witness and a suspect." I nodded. "Take her." 2 officers helped Kendra up. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Dad, help me," she begged. "Please. I am your daughter. Don't let them take me. Get me a lawyer. Please, Dad." I looked at her. I remembered holding her when she was a baby. I remembered her first day of school. I remembered the pride I felt when she graduated. And then I remembered Althea lying in her casket, cold and still, because of the greed that lived in this woman's heart. I turned my back on her. "You made your choice, Kendra," I said to the night air. "Now you have to live with it." I heard her screaming my name as they led her away. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I turned around, I might break. And I had to stay strong. I had to finish this. Tony walked up to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "It is done, Silas," he said softly. "They are both in custody. The ledger is secure. The hard drive is secure. We got them." I looked at the empty yard. The party decorations looked like garbage now. The white tents were sagging. "We got them," I repeated. But the victory tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at the house. My home. It felt empty, hollow. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene, a memorial to a life that had been stolen. "What now?" Tony asked. I looked at him. I looked at the friend who had stood by me when my own blood turned against me. "Now," I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the keys Brent had taken from me days ago. "Now I am going to sell this place. I am going to burn the memories of them out of my head. And then I am going to build something new. Something they can't touch." I walked toward my truck parked in the driveway where it had sat untouched for a week. I climbed in. The engine roared to life, a familiar, comforting sound. I drove away from the house without looking back. I left the lights on. I left the mess. I left the ghosts of my family behind. I had a long road ahead of me, but for the first time in a long time I was driving it alone, and I was driving it free. The police station smelled of stale coffee, industrial cleaner, and the sour sweat of desperation. It was a smell I knew from my days on construction sites, but here it carried a weight that pressed down on your chest. I walked down the long fluorescent hallway following the detective. My boots echoed on the linoleum floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. I had just dismantled a criminal empire in my backyard. I had faced down a gunman. I had reclaimed my life. But this walk, this was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. The detective stopped at a heavy steel door with a small reinforced window. He looked at me. "Are you sure you want to do this, Mr. King?" he asked. "She has been hysterical. She is blaming everyone but herself." I nodded. "I am sure. I need to look her in the eye." He swiped his key card and the door buzzed open. I stepped inside. The room was small, cold, and painted a depressing shade of gray. There was a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs. In one of them sat Kendra. She looked terrible. Her expensive black dress was torn and stained. Her makeup was smeared across her face in raccoon-like streaks. Her wrists were cuffed and attached to a metal ring on the table. When she saw me, she lunged forward, the chain snapping tight with a sharp clank. "Daddy," she sobbed. "Oh, thank God. Daddy, please get me out of here." I stood by the door. I didn't move toward her. I didn't rush to hug her. I just looked at the woman I had raised. I looked for the little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee. I looked for the teenager who promised she would make me proud. All I saw was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Please, Dad." Kendra begged, the tears flowing freely now. "You have to hire a lawyer, a good one. Brent told me he had a guy, but Brent is a liar. You have money, right? You have millions. You said so at the party. Use it. Get me bail. I can't stay here." The women in the holding cell looked at me like they wanted to kill me. I pulled out the metal chair opposite her and sat down slowly. The legs scraped against the floor. "You want a lawyer?" I asked, my voice low and flat. "Yes," she cried, nodding frantically. "The public defender is useless. He said I am looking at 20 years. 20 years, Daddy. I can't do 20 years. I am a victim here, a victim," I repeated. "Yes," Kendra insisted, leaning forward as far as the cuffs would allow. "It was all Brent. He forced me. He made me sign those papers. He made me put the things in Mom tea. I was scared of him, Dad. He threatened me. He said he would hurt you if I didn't help him. I did it to protect you." I listened to the lie. It was a good lie. If I hadn't heard the recordings myself, I might have believed it. She sounded terrified. She sounded convincing. But I had heard her voice on the tape. I had heard the cold calculation when she suggested switching to insulin because it was harder to trace. I had heard her laugh when they talked about putting me in a home. I reached into my jacket pocket. Kendra's eyes tracked my movement, hopeful. She probably thought I was reaching for my checkbook. She thought I was reaching for the pen that would sign her freedom. Instead, I pulled out a small orange plastic bottle. I placed it on the metal table between us. The sound of the plastic hitting the steel was soft, but in that small room, it sounded like a gavel. "Digoxin." Kendra froze, her eyes locked onto the bottle. The sobbing stopped instantly. The hope vanished, replaced by a cold, hard fear. "I found this in your purse, Kendra," I said. "Not Brent purse. Your purse." She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She licked her lips nervously. "Brent gave it to me," she stammered. "He told me to hold it." "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it slammed the door on her excuses. "Just stop. I heard the tapes, Kendra. I heard you talking about the dosage. I heard you talking about how she was taking too long to die." I leaned forward. I looked deep into her eyes. "Tell me," I whispered. "Did she suffer?" Kendra flinched as if I had slapped her. "Did your mother suffer when you poisoned her?" I asked again, louder this time. "Did her stomach hurt? Did she get dizzy? Did she look at you with those trusting eyes while you handed her the cup that was killing her?" Kendra looked away. She stared at the wall. "She trusted you," I said. "She defended you. When I said you were spending too much money, she said, 'Let her enjoy her life, Silas.' When I said Brent was a shark, she said he makes Kendra happy. She loved you more than her own life, and you watched her die." "I didn't want to watch," Kendra whispered. Her voice was different now. The hysterical victim act was dropping. "But you did," I said. You watched because you wanted the money. You wanted the house. You wanted the status. I slammed my hand on the table. "Look at me," I commanded. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were dry now. The mask was gone. "Why?" I asked. "Just tell me why. We gave you everything. We paid for your college. We paid for your wedding. We helped you with the down payment on your first house. Why wasn't it enough?" Kendra's face twisted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was rage. Pure, ugly resentment that had been festering for years. Enough, she spat. "You think that was enough? You lived like paupers, Dad. You had millions of dollars sitting in a bank account and we were living paycheck to paycheck trying to keep up appearances." She leaned in the chains, straining. "Do you know what it was like?" she hissed. "Do you know what it was like to go to that private school you sent me to and be the poor kid? To have friends who went to Europe for the summer while we went to the public park? You had all that money and you made me live like I was nobody." I sat back stunned. This was the truth. This was the rot at the core of her soul. "We taught you the value of work," I said. "We taught you that money is a tool, not a lifestyle. You taught me to be ashamed," she screamed. "You hoarded it. You sat on a mountain of cash like a dragon while Brent and I drowned in debt. We needed that money. We deserved that money. It was going to be mine eventually anyway. Why did I have to wait until I was old to enjoy it? Why did Mom have to live another 20 years clutching her purse strings while I suffered?" "Suffered?" I asked quietly. "You lived in a luxury apartment. You drove a Mercedes. You wore designer clothes. You didn't suffer, Kendra. You were just greedy." "It wasn't greed," she yelled. "It was survival. In our world, you are what you have. And we didn't have enough. Brent needed capital. He could have been a billionaire if you had just given him the seed money. But no. You had to be the humble bricklayer. You had to play the martyr." She laughed a bitter, jagged sound. "And look at you now," she sneered. "The big hero. You think you won. You are just a lonely old man with a pile of money and no one to leave it to. You killed this family, Dad. You killed it with your secrets and your tests. If you had just given us the money, Mom would be alive." The accusation hung in the air, toxic and heavy. She was blaming me. She was blaming my thrift for her murder. She was twisting reality to justify the unjustifiable. I looked at her and I finally understood. There was no reaching her. The daughter I loved was gone. Maybe she had been gone for a long time, consumed by the envy and entitlement that Brent had fed her. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor again. "I am done," I said. "Wait," Kendra said. Her face changed again. The anger vanished, replaced by panic as she realized she had gone too far. "Dad, wait. I didn't mean that. I am just stressed. I am scared. Please. You can't leave me here." I walked to the door. I knocked on the steel. "Dad, please," she screamed, pulling at her cuffs. "I am your daughter. You can't let me go to prison. I will die in here. I am not strong like you." I stopped with my hand on the door handle. I didn't turn around. "You are right," I said to the cold metal door. "You are not strong. You are weak, and you are dangerous because of it." "Dad, get me a lawyer," she shrieked. "You have to. You owe me." "I owe you nothing," I said. "I gave you life. I gave you love, and you gave me a funeral for my wife and a plot to put me in the ground next to her. The debt is paid, Kendra." I signaled the guard. The buzzer sounded. "Dad, no. Don't walk away, Dad." I stepped out into the hallway. The heavy steel door slammed shut, cutting off her screams. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the concrete wall. I felt old. Older than my 70 years. My heart felt like a stone in my chest. I had just condemned my own child to a cage. But then I remembered the orange bottle on the table. I remembered Althea clutching her chest, complaining of the pain while Kendra poured her another cup of tea. I pushed off the wall. I straightened my back. I walked down the hallway toward the exit. The detective was waiting for me at the front desk. "Did you get what you needed, Mr. King?" he asked. I nodded. "Is she going to get a lawyer?" he asked. I looked at the exit where the city lights were shining through the glass. "The court will appoint one for her," I said. "But you have the means," the detective said, confused. "You could hire the best defense team in the state." "I know," I said. I put my hat on my head. "She needs to learn a lesson, detective. She thinks money solves everything. She thinks money is the only thing that matters." I opened the door and the cool night air hit my face. "I am going to let her see what life looks like when you can't buy your way out of it," I said. I am going to let her sit in that cell and realize that all the money in the world can't buy back your soul once you have sold it. I walked out of the station. I left my daughter behind. I left the past behind. I had one more stop to make, one more secret to uncover. Althea had left me a legacy, and I had to make sure I honored it. The yellow police tape stretched across my front door like a jagged scar. I cut through it with my pocket knife, and the plastic snapped with a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet night. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled different now. It did not smell like lemon polish and Althea cooking anymore. It smelled of fingerprint dust, strangers, and betrayal. The furniture was still overturned from the FBI raid. The carpet where Brent had been tackled was stained with mud. My home was a crime scene, a hollow shell that held nothing but ghosts. I walked through the wreckage of the living room, ignoring the broken glass crunching under my boots. I went straight to the kitchen. I sat at the table, the same table where I had forged the document that saved my life. I placed the metal lockbox in front of me. Tony Rossi had given it back to me before I left the station. He had taken the ledger and the hard drive for evidence, but he said the box itself was mine. I stared at the gray metal. It was battered, scratched, and heavy. Tony had broken the lock, but the lid sat closed. I ran my rough hands over the surface. I felt the cold steel. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine Althea holding this box. Where did she hide it? How did she feel when she put the evidence of her murder inside? I opened the lid. It was empty now. The ledger was gone. The hard drive was gone. It was just a hollow metal container. But something bothered me. I am a builder. I have spent 50 years measuring depth and volume. I know how much space things take up. I looked at the depth of the box from the outside. Then I looked at the depth of the interior storage space. There was a discrepancy. It was small, maybe only half an inch, but to a man who measures in millimeters, it was a canyon. The bottom of the box was too shallow. I picked it up and shook it. There was no rattle. It was solid, but the weight was off. It was too heavy for an empty tin box, even a sturdy one. I went to the garage and got my tool bag. I came back and set a flathead screwdriver and a small hammer on the table. I turned the box upside down. The bottom was a solid sheet of steel welded at the corners, but the inside bottom was lined with felt. I took the screwdriver and jammed it into the corner of the felt lining. I dug deep. The felt tore. Underneath there was a metal plate, but it wasn't welded. It was fitted. I tapped the handle of the screwdriver with the hammer. Gently. Tap, tap, tap. The false bottom popped up on one side. I wedged the tool in and pried it open. The metal plate bent back, revealing a hidden compartment no thicker than a magazine. Tony Rossi, the best lawyer in the city, had missed it. The FBI agents had missed it. But Althea knew I wouldn't miss it. She knew her husband. She knew I checked the foundation of everything. Inside the shallow space wrapped in plastic to protect against moisture was a small leather-bound notebook and a thick envelope sealed with red wax. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. The notebook was old, the leather cracked. I opened it. It was a diary. Not the ledger of crimes, but a diary of thoughts. I started reading. The dates went back 2 years. July 14th. Kendra came by today. She asked for money again. She was wearing a dress that cost more than our monthly grocery bill, but she said she couldn't pay her electric bill. I gave her $500. I feel like I am feeding a monster. I flipped the pages. December 20th. Brent is asking about the buildings in Harlem. He thinks Silas doesn't know I listen when they talk. He called Silas a brick monkey. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw him out. But Kendra looked at him like he was a god. I am afraid for her. March 12th. I found the bank statements. They are stealing from us. I confronted Kendra. She cried. She said it was a loan. She lied to my face. My own daughter looked me in the eye and lied. I realized today that I don't know her anymore. The girl we raised is gone. May 4th. The doctor says my heart is weak, but I know it is the tea. Every time Kendra makes the tea, it tastes bitter. I stop drinking it when she watches, but sometimes I have to sip it to keep them calm. I am collecting samples. I am scared, Silas, not of dying. I am scared of what they will do to you when I am gone. I had to stop reading. The tears were blurring my vision so bad I couldn't see the ink. She knew. She knew they were poisoning her, and she drank the tea anyway to buy time to gather evidence to protect me. She sacrificed herself slowly, painfully, sip by sip, so that I would have the ammunition to survive. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. I picked up the sealed envelope. On the front, in her beautiful cursive handwriting, it said, "To Silas, read this only when it is over." I broke the wax seal. I pulled out several sheets of legal paper. It was a will, a holographic will, handwritten and witnessed by a notary I didn't recognize. But it wasn't just a distribution of assets. It was a letter, a final instruction manual from the grave. My dearest Silas, if you are reading this, then the worst has happened. You know about the theft, you know about the poison, and you know about Kendra. I am writing this because I know you. You are a man of iron will, but you have a soft heart for your family. You will want to save her. You will want to blame Brent for everything. You will tell yourself that she was manipulated, that she was a victim, that she can be fixed if we just love her enough. Stop. Do not do it, Silas. I need you to listen to me because I am the one who raised her too. I am the one who covered for her when she stole from my purse as a teenager. I am the one who paid off her credit cards in college and didn't tell you. I thought I was helping her. I thought I was protecting her. I was wrong. We broke her, Silas. We gave her too much. We shielded her from every consequence, and in doing so, we created a woman who thinks the world owes her everything. She is not a victim. She is a participant. I looked into her eyes when she handed me the poisoned cup. I saw the greed. I saw the impatience. She wanted me gone so she could have the things she thinks she deserves. I felt a cold chill wash over me. Althea words were echoing the thoughts I had tried to suppress in the interrogation room. The letter continued. You have recovered the assets. I know you have because you are smart and you are a fighter. But here is my final wish, my final command to you as your wife. Do not give her a dime. Do not pay for her lawyer. Do not pay her bail. Do not put money in her commissary account. If you save her now, you will damn her soul forever. If you use our money to buy her freedom, she will never learn. She will never change. She will spend the rest of her life looking for the next victim, the next shortcut. She needs to fall Silas. She needs to hit the bottom. She needs to sit in a cell and realize that she is not special, that she is not above the law, and that money cannot buy back a mother love. It is the only way to save her. It is the only way to cleanse the rot we allowed to grow. Let her fall. I promise you it will hurt you more than it hurts her. But you have to be strong. Be the builder. Sometimes you have to tear a house down to the studs to get rid of the mold. I love you, Silas. Live for me, build something good. And don't look back. You're Althea. I put the letter down on the table. The silence of the house pressed in on me, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt filled with her presence. She was right there with me, guiding my hand, hardening my resolve. I thought about Kendra sitting in that cell screaming for a lawyer, expecting her father to come charging in with a checkbook. I thought about the way she looked at me with hatred when I turned my back. I buried my face in my hands and I wept. I cried for the wife I lost. I cried for the daughter I lost. I cried for the guilt of knowing that our love, our generosity, had been the soil in which this poisonous weed had grown. Althea was braver than I was. She had looked death in the face and planned for the salvation of her daughter's soul, even if it meant condemning her body to prison. She was right. I knew it in my bones. If I bailed Kendra out, she would learn nothing. She would just be a criminal who got away with it. She would hate me for the rest of her life for catching her, but she would use my money to comfort herself. I sat there for a long time, until the tears dried on my cheeks. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The decision had been made for me by the woman who knew us both best. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I put the diary back in the lockbox. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard. The police tape fluttered in the breeze. You were right, Althea, I whispered to the darkness. I will let her fall. I turned away from the window. I looked at the house one last time. I looked at the walls I had painted, the floors I had laid. It was a good house, but it was poisoned. I grabbed my bag. I grabbed the lockbox. I walked to the front door. I was going to sell it all. The furniture, the art, the walls, the roof. I was going to liquidate everything that Brent and Kendra had coveted, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with the money. I wasn't going to hoard it. I wasn't going to let it sit in a bank account waiting for the next vulture. I walked out the door and locked it for the last time. The night air was cool and clean. I took a deep breath. I had work to do. Althea had given me my marching orders. "Build something good," she said. I got into my truck and started the engine. As I drove away from the house, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I looked forward, toward the city, toward Harlem, toward the future. My daughter was in a cell. My wife was in the ground. But I was still here. And as long as I had breath in my lungs and strength in my hands, I was going to build. I was going to build a legacy that had nothing to do with greed and everything to do with redemption. 2 years have passed since the night the lights went out in my backyard, and the truth came into focus under the glare of federal floodlights. I sold the house 3 months after the trial. I could not live there anymore. The walls whispered with the echoes of betrayal, and the floorboards creaked with the weight of ghosts I needed to leave behind. I sold it to a nice young couple who didn't know its history, and I hope they fill it with the kind of honest love that Brent and Kendra tried to suffocate. I took the money from the sale. I took the $2 million Brent had stolen and returned to me in that signed confession. I took the assets liquidated from his offshore accounts, and I took my own savings. I put it all into a single project in the heart of Harlem. It is a brick building 6 stories high with sturdy foundations and wide windows that let in the morning sun. I named it Althea Place. It is not a luxury condo complex. There is no concierge, and there are no marble floors. It is affordable housing for families who are trying to build a life just like Althea and I did 40 years ago. It has a daycare center on the ground floor and a community garden on the roof. Every time I walk past it, I see children playing where there used to be empty lots. I see mothers coming home from work with groceries they can afford. I see life blooming from the compost of my tragedy. I work there every day. I am 72 years old now, but I still wear my tool belt. I fix leaky faucets. I patch drywall. I teach the young men in the neighborhood how to mix mortar and how to lay a brick so it stands for 100 years. They call me Mr. Silas. They don't know I own the building. They just think I am the superintendent. And in a way I am. I am tending to the garden Althea wanted me to plant. Brent sits in a federal penitentiary 3 states away. He is serving 20 years for money laundering and murder. I don't visit him. I don't think about him. He is a structure that was condemned and demolished, and there is no use mourning the rubble. But Kendra is different. Today is Tuesday. Tuesdays are visiting days at the State Women Correctional Facility. I woke up at 5 in the morning just like I always do. I drank my coffee black. I put on my clean work shirt and my good boots. I drove my old pickup truck, the one Brent hated so much, the 2 hours upstate. The prison is a grim place. It is a monument to mistakes and bad choices built of gray concrete and razor wire. The waiting room smells of pine sol and despair. I sat in the plastic chair holding my hat in my hands, waiting for my number to be called. When the buzzer sounded, I walked through the metal detector and into the visiting room. It is a large cafeteria-style room filled with tables bolted to the floor. I sat at table 12. A few minutes later, the door on the far side opened. A line of women in orange jumpsuits walked in. They shuffled their feet, their heads down. I almost didn't recognize her at first. The Kendra who walked toward me was not the woman who wore silk robes and drank imported wine. Her hair was cut short, chopped close to her scalp in a no-nonsense style that highlighted the sharp angles of her face. She wore no makeup, her skin was pale, and her hands were red and rough. She worked in the prison kitchen scrubbing pots and pans for 8 hours a day. She looked 10 years older than the woman I saw at the gala, but she also looked clearer. She sat down across from me. She didn't lunge for my hands like she did at the police station. She didn't cry. She kept her hands folded in her lap. She looked me in the eye. "Hello, Dad," she said softly. "Hello, Kendra," I replied. For a long time we didn't say anything. We just sat there in the noise of the visiting room, 2 survivors of a shipwreck looking at each other across the wreckage. "I heard you finished the building," she said. "I saw a picture in a magazine one of the guards had. It looks beautiful." "Mom would have loved the garden on the roof." "She would have," I said. "I planted azaleas, her favorite." Kendra nodded. A small, sad smile touched her lips. I remember she used to make me help her prune them. I hated it then. I kept worrying about getting dirt under my fingernails. She looked down at her hands. They were calloused now. The nails were short and unpolished. "I don't worry about dirt anymore," she said. "It is funny what you get used to." She didn't ask about money. She didn't ask if I had sold the jewelry. She didn't ask when I was going to get her a better lawyer. For the last 6 months of visits, she hadn't asked for a single thing. The entitlement that had defined her life had been scrubbed away by the harsh reality of prison life. She was learning the lesson I had tried to teach her for 30 years. She was learning that you earn your place in the world. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "I am okay," she said. "I am reading a lot. I am taking classes, GED, tutoring for some of the younger girls. It feels good to be useful. It feels good to do something that isn't about me." She looked up at me again. Her eyes were wet, but the tears didn't fall. "How are you, Dad? Are you eating enough? Is your ankle bothering you?" I blinked, surprised. It was the first time in 20 years she had asked me how I was without an agenda. She wasn't asking because she wanted to gauge my weakness. She was asking because she cared. "I am doing fine, Kendra," I said. "My ankle talks to me when it rains, but I listen to it. I am eating, I am working, I am living." She nodded. "Good, that is good. You deserve to live, Dad. You deserve peace." The guard called out. 5 minutes. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small folded piece of paper. I slid it across the metal table. Kendra looked at it but didn't touch it. "What is this?" she asked. "It is a trust fund," I said. She pulled her hand back as if the paper were hot. "Dad, no. I don't want your money. I don't want anything. I caused enough damage chasing money. Please take it back." "Read it," I said sternly. She hesitated, then slowly unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the legal text. She frowned. "It is a savings account," I explained. "It has $20,000 in it. It is not a fortune. It is a safety net. But look at the date, Kendra. Look at the restriction clause." She squinted at the fine print. Access date, she read, October 14th, 2045. "That is right," I said. "That is the day you turn 50 years old. That is the day you will be released if you serve your full sentence with good behavior." I leaned forward. "I am not giving you money to make your life easier in here," I said. "You are going to do your time. You are going to scrub pots and you are going to sleep on a cot. But when you walk out of those gates, you are going to be a middle-aged woman with nothing. No home, no job history, no husband." I pointed at the paper. "That money will be there waiting for you. It is enough to rent a small apartment. It is enough to buy a used car and a suit for a job interview. It is a second chance, Kendra. But you have to earn it. You have to survive the next 18 years and come out the other side as a person worthy of that fresh start." Kendra stared at the paper. Her hands were shaking. She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw the daughter I had lost. I saw the spark of the girl who used to draw pictures of houses and say she wanted to be a builder like her daddy. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice broke. "Thank you, Dad. I don't deserve it." "Maybe not," I said. "But Althea believed in second chances. And she believed in you. This is her gift, Kendra, not mine. She wanted you to have a floor to stand on when you finally stopped falling." Kendra pressed the paper to her chest. She closed her eyes and let the tears come. They were honest tears, cleansing tears. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. "I am so sorry for everything. I know I said—" I stood up. My time was up. "I forgive you, Kendra," I said. She looked up, startled. "I forgive you," I repeated. "Because holding on to the hate is too heavy for an old man to carry. I forgive you, but I will not forget, and I will not save you from the work you have to do. You are on your own in there, but I will be waiting out here." I turned and walked away. I heard her whisper, "I love you, Dad," behind me. I didn't turn back. I kept walking. I walked out of the prison into the bright afternoon sun. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. I climbed into my truck. The seat was worn and comfortable, molding to my back like an old friend. I started the engine. It rumbled to life, a steady, reliable heartbeat. I drove down the winding road away from the gray walls and the razor wire. I drove toward the highway, toward the city, toward the sunset, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I thought about Althea. I thought about the lockbox. It was empty now, sitting on a shelf in my new apartment. Its job was done. It had revealed the truth. It had purged the poison from my life. People say blood is thicker than water. They say family is everything. But I learned the hard way that sometimes blood can turn toxic. Sometimes you have to cut off a limb to save the body. I had cut the rot out. I had torn down the condemned house. And now, on the bedrock of the truth, I was building something new. I looked at the road ahead. It was open. It was clear. I am Silas King. I am a builder. I am a survivor. And for the first time in a long time, I am at peace. I rolled down the window and let the wind hit my face, driving my old truck into the rest of my life. I learned that you cannot buy loyalty and you cannot inherit integrity. For years, I thought hiding my wealth was about protecting my privacy, but it was really about protecting my family from their own worst instincts. I failed to save them, but I saved myself. True family is not defined by DNA. It is defined by who stands next to you when the lights go out. If you are holding on to someone who hurts you just because they are family, let them go. Peace is worth more than any inheritance. Did you agree with my decision to leave Kendra in prison? Let me know in the comments below and tell me where you are listening from. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please like and subscribe for more.